Hello everybody, Grayos here. Today I would like to just show off the rosters of each faction. No battle or anything. I'm just going to go through the list and let you just see what's on display for the custom battle screen. Starting with Chaos Undivided. You'll see that there is a large assortment of demons of every faction. Your standard marauders, your demonettes, nurglings, chosen of each god, plague bearers, bloodletters, chaos trolls. I love chaos trolls. Horrors of Tzeentch, sorcerers of Nurgle. They function pretty. They're basically the same, but these guys have, from what I could tell, maybe more range, slight AOE to their attack. But yeah, they're both pretty much the same. The only real different one is the Tzeentch sorcerers on disc, which function as basically mounted cavalry. They're able to fire while they move, and they're very handy, just like the flamers. It's one of the things that make Tzeentch so potent and tactically. Halberdiers, warriors, hounds, right here. Pretty good choice. Flanking. Not as good as Screamers of Tzeentch, though, or mounted demonettes for that matter. Demonettes are, I believe these are the fastest cavalry units in the game. Chaos Chariots, super fantastic charge, super duper. You're chosen of Nurgle and Slaanesh on horseback. Plague Beasts are a bitch to fight. They're a bitch to fight. But they can go down. Takes some doing, though. Chaos Mammoths, new unit. Lord of Change. Now, I should have started off with this, but this is an older version, so there's still quite a few units that have unlocalized placement text. So I don't know exactly which one these are. I believe one of these are the Dragon Ogres. These, maybe? I don't know. But yeah, this is an older version, and it's all a work in progress, so do not judge based solely on what you see here. This is just to get you a little excited about what's to come, because there's already a lot of good work put into the mod. And this is a very old version. Very, very old version. Here we have the Greater Demons of Change, of Nurgle, and of Slaanesh. I believe they all have ranged options, so they're able to just sit back and bombard if you so wish, but they're also very devastating in melee. Marauder Cavalry, Champions, Skullcrushers of Khorne, Knights, Tzeentch Knights, Khorne Knights, Bloodcrushers of Khorne, the Bloodthirster, which is super duper cool. Very cool model, very devastating unit on the battlefield. Hell Cannons, lots of ammo, lots of damage to buildings. But wildly inaccurate. Very, very inaccurate. Gores. All the Beastmen units are now rounded up into the rosters for Chaos, so it adds a lot of flavor to the armies, especially with like spear units and Centaurs, which are very cheap and very quick to make, and Beastigors. Beastigors are a very good unit. 1 turn to make, 2 hit points, really good charge. Shield Maidens, got some Norscan units, Heretic Halberdiers. I believe you can make them from Empire cities. You don't start with the ability to make them, from what I can tell. Chaos Ogres, Minotaurs. It's always nice to be able to have Minotaurs. New model, very good looking model for the Minotaurs now. Chaos Dwarf Blunderbuss, Centaurs, Norscan Raiders, and Giants. All in all, a very versatile roster. Like Khorne and Tzeentch, they're more specific, but Chaos Undivided, by its very nature, has just a wonderful roster. Has all the main units of each individual Chaos faction, plus the Beastmen, and you have yourself a very well-rounded faction. For Khorne, still a lot of the same. yeah, there's nothing different really, but it's a very melee-focused army, as you can expect, because you don't have to wait for scripts or anything. You could totally just make an entire army of demons or sorcerers or whatever you want. You just have to have the time and resources to do it. But yeah, nothing too crazy. All the models are subject to change. The Chaos Ogres, for instance, are still being worked on. So are the Dragon Ogres. Hopefully we'll see what they look like in the next version soon. For Tzeentch, again, more of the same. More skirmish and more mobile. Not the most mobile by any means, but the fact that the flamers and the sorcerers on discs are able to move around and fire gives you a lot of versatility. That's pretty much the only thing that's really different. I mean, the stats for the individual Chaos Warriors, let's see, 11, 5, 7... Oh, they don't have halberdiers. Oh wait, no they do. Yeah, so they're pretty much just stat-wise even the same. But for instance, the these chosen here have better defense. And I'm sure the Khorne chosen have better attack. I believe the Nurgle chosen have 2 HP. Yeah, they just have more endurance, essentially. For Nurgle, you have Plague Bearers, Nurglings, and Plague Beasts, as well as the Great Unclean One. Other than that, pretty standard stuff as far as the Chaos factions are concerned. They also have sorcerers. Nurgle and Tzeentch will both have sorcerers. I don't know if Slaanesh is going to have a sorcery unit. I remember hearing that they want all the factions that would make sense to have access to magic, So, I imagine Slaanesh might have their own unique spellcaster at some point. But for now, they have Demonettes. Demonettes are something else. They are really, really hard on morale. They hurt your morale very badly. They're very quick. Very good stamina. When they're mounted, they are the quickest unit in the game, from what I could tell. The Keeper of Secrets is their greater demon. Let's see, hit points 12, defense of 63, charge of 30. Attack 33, defense 63. So that's the same as the Bloodthirster, at least for the moment. Remember, all these stats are subject to change. Hit points 12. Just comparing greater demons. God, they are truly something. To actually face them on the field, it's pretty terrifying. Alright, that was the 4 Chaos factions and Undivided. Moving on to the Chaos Dwarves. A lot of Goblin and Orc slave units. New unit of the Infernal Guard. Really, really good defense. 2 hit points. Very good, solid infantry line. Chaos Dwarf Demon Smiths, which are their spellcaster unit. They function as artillery. Decent rate of fire, decent range. They also have Hobgoblins, which are just a better goblin, basically. Access to Chaos Trolls, explosive crossbows, which are a wonderful unit to see in action. The Infernal Guard with Fireglaive, one of my personal favorite units. Just basically handguns that are in the form of a halberd, so they're able to do a good amount of damage in melee as well as holding off people at range. Wolf Riders for cavalry options, mounted with goblins. And some of the best artillery in the game. The Death Rocket, I mean, look at that building damage, 1,000 building damage. The Death Rocket may not have the rate of fire as the Hellstorm rocket battery of the Empire, but they have a lot of ammunition, and if you bring 3 or 4 units, you're able to just salvo into the enemy over and over and over again for a very long time. If you bring these into a siege, you're going to have an excess of rockets to fire at your enemy, and you'll do a lot of damage. The Earthshaker Cannon, again, 1,000 versus buildings. Really good artillery unit. Has a really heavy AoE, so you land a shell around your enemy, and there's small delay. It's like a bunker buster in a lot of ways. It lands, it buries itself, and then it just explodes in a very large AoE. Doesn't necessarily kill everybody, but it will disrupt a formation like no other artillery can. They also have access to the Earthshaker? What do I call it, Earthshaker? Why am I forgetting the name of this? Hell Cannon? Hell Cannon. Did it actually say it up top? Yeah, it says it up top. I'm an idiot. Hell Cannon, the Mighty Throg's Hobgoblin Despoilers, just some named units of orcs. Harboth's Black Mountain Boys, for instance. Harboth's Orc Archers, Ogres, Mercenary Ogres, access to Giants, Oglacon's Wolf Boys, some Goblin Engines, Bolt Thrower. Jesus Christ. A Bolt Thrower and a Catapult. And Lead Belchers, of course. I think that was my next episode of Vermintide. Moving on to the Skaven, which is a very unique roster. We'll start at the bottom. Warp Fire Throwers. Just a wonderful unit to have. Warp Lightning Cannon. Long range. Pretty slow rate of fire, but it's really, really accurate. Really high AoE. Screaming Bell. Keep your morale good. Doom Wheel. Really good charge. Just kind of warp lightning everywhere. Lots of hit points. Rattling Guns, which are a personal favorite unit of mine in this game. If you park them on a flank and shoot down your battle line, it is unreal the amount of damage you can do as long as you protect them. Doomflayer, the de facto cavalry of the Skaven army. Warplock Jezzails, really solid skirmish unit. Very, very good armor penetration. You can eat a unit of knights just in seconds if you have focus fire from like 2 or 3 units of these. Albino Guard, functioning as Storm Vermin, but just like more elite. Usually your General's Bodyguard. Or actually the Storm Vermin are usually the bodyguard. I think these are just elite infantry. Poison Wing Globadiers, relatively short range skirmisher unit. They function a lot like javelins, so they can like throw over your main battle line, and they cause a lot of morale damage, a good amount of AoE. They have a decent rate of fire, decent ammo. They're really good at what they do. Really good at what they do. You park them behind your main battle line, and if you don't mind the friendly fire, you can just shoot into your own guys. You'll get them to rout. If you have a bell, your guys will chill out, and they won't mind it too much. The Grey Seers are really effective. I mean, all spellcasters in this mod are pretty damn effective, but these guys especially, they are pretty long range, They have a lot of ammo, not as much as the neck arcs or the liches, but they do a lot of damage. Really good rate of fire. Very accurate. Rat Ogres, a lot of hit points, a lot of defense, very tough unit to take down. You take any more than 2 units of these, and you're probably going to win, to be honest, if you actually use them properly and support them. On their own, they can still get surrounded and killed, but if you have a unit of ogres and literally a unit of anything else, slaves, clan rats, plague monks would be a wonderful way to follow them up, because they have 2 hit points. But yeah, they're a very effective line breaker unit, and they're very good at pinning down more infantry than you would expect. Clan rat pikemen and Skaven slave pikemen. They're pikemen. Nothing spectacular about them, really, but they come in large numbers. They're fast. All Skaven units are fast. They are really good at running down enemy fleeing enemy armies, I should say. Skaven assassins. They're just ninjas, essentially. They're able to hide anywhere, ambush. They pop out and throw shuriken. They're very good at what they do. Plague monks are probably my favorite infantry, aside from, well, there's a lot of favorite infantry in the Skaven. They have a very decent stat line, and the 2 hit points certainly helps. In groups of 3 to 4, they are a very good choice for your flanks if you're running with storm vermin or pikemen as the main line. Very hard to take down, especially with rat ogre or any other kind of weapon team. Globadiers, rattling gun, warp fire throwers, anything like that. Gutter runners, kind of like diet ninjas, essentially, or diet assassins. Still able to hide. I think these guys, yeah, the assassins can hide anywhere. The gutter runners can hide in long grass. Yeah, same. Well, actually, no. They just can hide and they attack melee. I thought they had some kind of range option. The night runners are able to throw knives, and they're basically gutter runners, except with a slight range option. Slightly less defense and attack, slightly worse stat line. The Packmaster inspires nearby troops, has 2 hit points. Really don't use them that much. I tend to use the Screaming Bell because the Screaming Bell comes with a unit of storm vermin, these guys here, as bodyguards. So you're able to you have a more reliable infantry section when it actually gets down to it. Clan rats and Skaven slaves. Nothing spectacular about their stat line or anything like that. The clan rats have much better morale than your slaves. And of course, small rats, just a horde of rats. I find that the Skaven army works best in in a more traditional Roman sense, so forming a triplex axis with Skaven slaves and small rats in front, forming what would be the Hastati line, and then clan rats and plague monks forming your Principe line, your second line, and then your storm vermin and your rat ogres and your plague monks and your more elite infantry forming the triarii, and then everything else would just function like your velites, your skirmish and support. So you'd have them on the flanks, and you would just kind of deploy things as you needed them. As the battle unfolded, you would just let your slaves go out there, engage the enemy, pin them, and if you need to let them fight for a while, you let them fight before you deploy anything else. If they get killed, you immediately send in your Principe. You can, if you want to save your slaves for some reason, they're just slaves, you can start deploying weapons teams and rat ogres to the flanks and stuff. There's a lot of options. And also, they can function as a lot of different armies. If you can spam rat ogres, for instance, you can have several units of rat ogres and build around that. You can build several units of Jezzails and Rattling guns and warp lightning cannons. You have a very shooty army, which is a very fun way to play this Skaven. Lots of plague monks, lots of storm vermin. If you take storm vermin and Jezzails and doomflayers, you can actually make an army that is very reminiscent of the Imperial army, with cavalry support, handgun lines, lots of halberds. It's very interesting how versatile they are tactically with this roster. Moving on, we have the Orcs and Goblins. Have a bunch of Night Goblin units, Forest Goblins, more Night Goblins, Night Goblin Netters. Nothing too fancy up to this point. The Netters are just kind of there to interrupt and slow down advancing armies. Black Arcs, De Mortals, Grimgore's Bodyguard. They are pretty devastating. Orc Boar Boys, Savage Boar Boys, Squig Hoppers, Night Goblin Squig Herd, Orc Boy Biggins, Orc Boy Chariots, Night Goblin Fanatics. The Fanatics are a really cool unit because they just sit there and they spin around. You gotta be careful because they can hurt your own guys. They're usually best for just an opening attack, I've found. They're a little less controllable in other circumstances. But, I mean, hey, you're playing orcs, so just select everything and tell them to attack. Wyverns, I mean, they're dragon-like creatures, so, I mean, not really much to explain. They fly, really good defense, really good charge, very impressive model. Goblin Wolf Riders. I should back up a little bit. The Squigs are a very fun unit in large packs because they have 2 hit points and a high charge. I forget what the special attack actually does. That may just be like a kind of AoE thing, a small AoE, but they are really hardy. Like, I'm surprised at how effective they are in combat. I fear them more than most Goblin units and most Orc units. Black Orcs are definitely something to fear. If you don't have firearms, you will have trouble fighting Black Orcs. Even a cavalry charge to a pack of Black Orcs will do a remarkable... it's kind of remarkable how little a cavalry charge directly to the flank or rear of Black Orcs will do. You gotta bring firearms. You gotta. Czechists are my favorite unit for fighting Black Orcs. Mounted rifles, yeah, they're pretty useful. Spear Chukka, just a ballista. Doomdiver Catapult. They are very accurate and incredibly long range. Can do absolutely nothing to buildings, though. They don't do that much damage, but they do enough damage to be annoying. And over time, they do inflict a lot of casualties. So, and because of that range, you will be getting shot at by them for the majority of the fight if you don't take them out. Rock Globbers, just catapult unit. I believe they come in 4s. Yeah, they come in 4s. Night Goblin Shamans and Orc Shamans. While not the most spectacular spellcasters, they are, well, spellcasters. So if you don't respect what they can do on the field and you don't prioritize them and kill them quickly, they will do a lot of damage to you. Going down here, the Mighty Throg's Hobgoblin, Despoilers of the Darkland. Just getting into the named units. Hargoth, Black Mountain Boys, Mundet's Mercenary Half-Orc Maniacs. Just slightly different stat lines, just better than your average boys. Harboth's orcs, ruglugs, armored orcs. Here you have orcs with crossbows, so you can actually take down heavily armored units. They have access to ogres, stone trolls, sons of Stromfells. I don't know where these guys come into the lore, but they are sharkmen. They're sharkmen the size of ogres. I have not seen them on the field yet. I don't know what their deal is, but they exist, and they're in the game. Yeah, just ogre mercenaries, trolls, Oglakhan's wolf boys, forest spider riders, or forest goblin spider riders. Quick to recruit, fairly cheap. They have a relatively large unit pool, so you'll see a lot of them on the field. Same with the giant spiders. The giant spiders are, if you've seen if you've seen some of my other videos, you know I'm not really too fond of the giant spiders. They have a very large AoE attack. So, I mean, just 4 units of these, which make up 12 giant spiders. They're 3 giant spiders per unit. Just 3 or 4 units of these guys can take down a stack of any other army's basic infantry. If you do not have special units to counter these, and by special units I mean high HP, high defense stuff, super high attack stuff, like rat ogres or something, or trolls, or ogres, or giants even, you're gonna have trouble. You can't shoot them down very easy. You can't, like even halberds and all that. Well, actually, halberds do a decent job, but you will lose an astonishing number of men trying to bring them down. Really, it's just spellcasters. And what's wrong with the problem with that is that's a very expensive counter to a relatively inexpensive special unit, because the orcs for this unit it's 4,000 to recruit. I think it's 4 turns to make, and the pool is about 4 or 5 units. So they make these a lot, whole lot. So you're gonna have to deal with a lot of them, and you almost never have enough spellcasters. We also have access to giants, lead belchers, and knot lobs, bolt thrower, and goblin catapults. So all around, aside from the black orcs, you're not going to really find that many heavily armored units. A lot of shield-bearing units, which is good. They have access to trolls and ogres, mostly trolls though. You'll find in the mercenary pools in the Badlands, there's quite a few trolls and giants, and honestly, you don't really need armor at that point. You don't need knights, you don't need heavily armed and armored halberdiers or anything if you got giants and trolls, and of course giant spiders. But yeah, they are. I wouldn't want to call them squishy, because they're orcs. They're hardy in their nature, but yeah, their morale's decent. If you kill their leader, they will rout. But yeah, bring handguns, basically. Bring handguns and bring knights and halberds. Moving on to the night goblins. The night goblins are essentially the same. They just have access to less orcs. Like if you want just to play a more goblin-focused army, here you have your night goblins, your forest goblins, your a couple of the named orc units, which function mainly as mercenaries, ogres, stone trolls, giants, giant spiders, forest spider cavalry, squigs, squig riders, squig hoppers, fanatics, siege engine, doom diver, catapult, all that good stuff. I've yet to try out this faction on the campaign, but they're pretty good at what they do. There's a lot of them. There's always a lot of them. Because the roster is so cheap, always expect to be fighting multiple stacks. Next up is the Ogres. Now, the Ogres are, at this version, very rudimentary. Essentially, this is your only unit in the faction. Or for the campaign, at least. You start with several units of these guys, and you just kind of wander around, and you pick up mercenaries. You'll pick up a lot of orc boys, some giants, some trolls from the Darklands and the Badlands. Again, this is a very old version, and now there are Gorgers, there are Iron Guts, I think there's Butchers. Yeah, there's a whole campaign now, so I'm really looking forward to the next version so that we can play around with it and I can show them off for you. Another personal favorite, the Vampire Counts. They have von Karstein infantry, just solid vampires. I've seen these guys stand toe-to-toe with trolls. They are, if you have one unit of supporting anything, skeleton archers, or not skeleton archers, but skeleton warriors, empire swordsmen, anything like that, you engage those guys first and then you bring those guys in. They are really effective. Very, very good damage, very good hit points, or defense, and all that. They do have access to state troops, so empire swordsmen, halberdiers, spearmen, and archers. Right here. Very good way to pad your army with more reliable troops that just are slightly more effective than your skeletal variants. Spirit hosts, which cause terror, affect the morale of enemies. Decent enough in combat, nothing too crazy. Khorne wraiths, which are very effective against armor, so like any dismounted knights or heavy halberdiers of Averland, for instance. Getting a side or rear charge against some knights that are already engaged, a really good way to kill them. Graveguard, which are just your skeletal warriors, but more effective, a lot more reliable. They cause a lot more damage, especially the halberdiers. I never really find myself fielding the Graveguard with swords all that much. I usually tend to go with the halberdiers. Dragonolf Guard, two-handed unit, decent enough charge, pretty good attack, pretty decent at taking on larger units like trolls or rat ogres or giants or anything like that. Then you have blood dragons. Blood dragons are one of the craziest units I've ever seen. Bar none, one of my favorite units in the game. They can stand up to basically anything. Their mounted variant is the same way. They can go toe-to-toe with any other cavalry unit in the game. I'd put them up against blood crushers and still feel alright about myself. The warrior, the dismounted variant, has a two-handed blade. They have very, very good defense, 2 HP. Very well armored. It's very, very hard to kill these guys, and they dish out a lot of damage. Empire archers, very long range. Not much to be said. They're archers. Neck arcs, probably one of the better spellcasters in the game. They have a very high ammo pool, so they will be casting magic for the majority of the fight. They have a very good rate of fire. It's actually kind of ridiculous how fast they fire. And they have a very long range. So that's pretty much the criteria for your spellcasters right there, at least for the way that they're portrayed in this mod. You want long range, high ammo pool, high rate of fire. That way you're engaging very quickly in the battle. You can pull them back from your front line, your front skirmish line, maneuver them somewhere else to where they can keep firing. They can respond to flanking units from behind your lines, either side, as long as you place them in the middle, because they're long range, high rate of fire, all that good stuff. Yeah, one of the better units of the game right there, the neck arcs. Direwolves, nothing too crazy. decent scouts and flankers. They're good for chasing down enemy cavalry and pinning them. Good at running down fleeing units, for instance. Yeah, not too crazy with them. I don't use them that much, but Black Vampire Knights, or Vampire Black Knights. A solid heavy cavalry, really. I mean, they're nothing spectacular, especially in comparison to the other cavalry options you have in the Vampire Count's army, but they do the job. They're a very solid cavalry unit. Von Karstein Cavalry, which has actually been changed to the Hex Wraith Cavalry, so they're Cairn Wraiths mounted. They have a very heavy charge, very good against armor. Yeah, they're just fantastic. The Black Coach, I'm actually not too familiar with this unit. I'm not very sure what they do. They have a special attack of some sort. I don't know if that's just an AoE thing. Yeah, I'll probably end up doing something with these guys soon. That way I can actually learn what they do. 15 hit points. That's kind of ridiculous. Excellent morale, can't hide, good stamina. Huh. And they cause terror, just like everything else in this army, basically. Knights of the Black Grail. They are fallen Brettonian knights, and they are as effective as Brettonian knights. They're really hard-hitting, really good defense, really hard to kill them if you don't plan to kill heavily armored things with, like, handguns or mages, for instance. But then there's the Blood Dragon Knights. Blood Dragon Knights are, like I've said, one of the most ridiculous units in the game. Very, very hard to kill them, even with like ogres, for instance. Like, they'll take an ogre charge on the nose and keep fighting because they have 2 hit points. Also, handguns. Unless you have favorable ground, like high ground that you can place your firearms on and allow them to fire freely without fear of being run off, you're not going to do much to these guys. Even if you hit them, you have to hit them several times, and if you can't hit them enough by the time they're actually doing damage, then you're kind of screwed. Screaming Skull Catapult. Basically a catapult. Doesn't do that much damage to buildings, but it does do a little bit. Decent AoE, decent rate of fire, decent ammo. Not too terribly long range, but I mean, it's a catapult. It has the range of a catapult. I believe it causes fear, like similar to what the trebuchets firing dead cows did. I could be wrong on that, though. Could be just wishful thinking. Again, don't really use it that much. It's kind of with the Black Coach. I don't really use the catapult that much, just because it doesn't do that much building damage. And I'd rather have more zombies, even, for instance, or more blood dragons, neckarchs, archers, literally anything. One big change that's about to happen in the next version is down here, the skeleton archers and the crossbows are going to be removed from the roster because they're not lore friendly. I'm not sure if the Empire archers and the Free Company archers will remain in. They stand a good chance of getting lifted as well, I would think, but you never know. Crypt Ghouls. They are good stamina. Really, that's all you could say about them, to be honest. I mean, they're not all that great. I mean, they have the same stats as Skeleton Warriors, and yeah, it's essentially just another troop choice. Your Skeleton Warrior, your base, that and the Spearmen will form up the bulk of your army. Incredibly low upkeep. I believe that these guys are 10 and these guys are 15, or vice versa, but you can field huge hordes of these guys. The zombies, I think, have an upkeep of 5, and they're the zombies are very slow. I should have specified this, but zombies are very slow, and with them what you want to do is deploy them out front and deploy everything else far back. That way they're already ahead of your army, so that when you start marching they have a chance to actually be useful. Otherwise they will just spend the whole fight walking and not really doing anything else. So you want to plan around your zombies being the first thing to engage, because there's just so many of them and they won't run. They do have access to free company, just like the other state troops. Krell's personal guard. I actually don't know much about this unit either. Look like just an elite bodyguard, decent enough stat line, much better than your standard warriors, and spearmen for that matter. And then mounted skeletons. Terrible quality. Just to be completely honest, they're a terrible, terrible unit. They die very quickly. They don't do much. Really, their only purpose is to have the option to chase off skirmishers and run down fleeing units. That's what they're the only good thing about them, really. Otherwise, just don't even bother. Go with Vampire Black Knights if you want cavalry units that will actually be hammer and anviling, for instance, or charging into the front of swordsmen, or yeah, literally any other job than forcing skirmishers out of position or chasing down routing units. That's all this guy is good for. Next up, we'll take a look at the Tomb Kings. Now, the Tomb Kings function a lot like the Vampire Counts, except they have a higher volume of, not top tier, but just better tier undead units than the Vampire Counts do. For instance, their Skeleton Warriors are just better, have low upkeep, good numbers. Their slaves are functionally the same as zombies in the Vampire Counts army, except they're more useful. They have a better stat line. Not by much, but they have better stats. Less numbers, but they're also faster, meaning they don't just shamble. Tomb Skeletons, javelin throwers, pretty useful against, well, most units really, as long as you can keep them alive. Holy Sons, which I believe these guys are two-handed infantry. Really decent charge for infantry. Again, like, none of these guys are going to rout, because they're undead. Mummies, hard to kill, pretty vulnerable to ranged attack since they have no shield or anything. Again, they have a really good charge, and yeah, really great on the flanks, these guys in the Holy Sons. That's where you want to put them. Black Guardians of Zandri, which are your pikeman unit. Vulnerable to missiles because of a lack of shields, but still a very good frontline unit. Forms a really heavy spear wall, able to take most charges on the nose. But if you can whittle them down first, then they won't be that big of a deal. From what I could tell, cavalry, large monsters, all that kind of stuff, these guys are a very cheap way of dealing with that. Not a spectacular stat line by any means, but they do the job. Skeleton Spearmen, what it says on the 10 really, just spears, shields. A good early game frontline unit. These guys, don't remember who these guys are. They're not the Temple Guard. I don't know. 62 units. Probably a cavalry? No, these are the Necropolis Knights. Not the Chariots. Not the Scarabs. Not the neighbor kids being loud. Yeah, I don't know what these guys are. The Tomb Guard, your elite infantry. Really, really good armor. Good armor penetration as well. So you put these guys up against Chaos Warriors or Great Swords, or even blood dragons, really. I mean, they're not the best at dealing with those things, but as far as the roster is concerned, this is who you need to pair with those guys. The Ushabti, which are high hit points. Well, high hit points. They have 3 hit points. Wonderful charge and just absolutely devastating attack. They are a very good linebreaker unit. They come in units of 85, I believe that is. Yeah, 85. And as far as the campaign is concerned, they're not all that terrible to recruit in terms of time, unit pool, and recruitment cost, and upkeep cost for that matter. You could field a good amount of them in your army, and yeah, they're very devastating for what they cost. Scarabs, you've got a swarm unit, very cheap, low upkeep, good against cavalry, decently hard to kill, and like when you take into account other factions, chaff units like goblins or zombies or anything like that, they're pretty good at the job. They fill that role very well. Skeleton archers, good range. I mean, really not much to be said. They're archers. They are a good skirmisher unit. They're just a solid skirmisher unit. The liches. Now, the liches and the neckarchs are, in my opinion, the best spellcasters. Say what you want about bright wizards and grey seers, but these guys here have very long range, good ammo capacity, and have fast rate of fire. As we talked about with the neckarchs, those 3 things make a good spellcaster. The bright wizards, they're not as accurate. I don't believe their range is as extreme, and their fire rate is maybe twice that of these guys. Or twice as slow, I should say, as these guys. It may not sound crazy considering how fast the bright wizards actually fire, but these guys fire quicker, and that does a lot of damage. Skeleton horse archers, mounted skirmish unit, good at what they do. These guys and the dismounted archers, they're not going to run, so you could say that they're slightly better than the majority of skirmishers for that reason. Like, they can take a charge on the nose, and you can count on them not to just run away. You can actually maneuver them back. They actually can function as chaff units in a lot of regards if you have to force them into that position. Horse archers, they're kind of fragile, but, you know, they're on horseback, so they're quick. You should be able to get them out of the way. These skeleton horsemen, got your light cavalry. They fulfill that role very well. That's kind of the theme of this army, is they're just a solid army that plays very traditionally in the Total War sense. You got pikemen, 2-handed weapons for the flanks, a chaff unit or 2 with the scarabs and slaves, and their special units really accentuate that role. So, like, you have a good line breaker. You put these guys on the flanks with some of your Holy Sons or Mummies, and they're that much more effective. You put some Black Guardians with your Spearmen on a front line, they're that much more effective. You take your Skirmishers and add a Lich, and your skirmish line is now fantastic. If you can invest in the special units to add to your army, then you'll definitely receive a force multiplier. They're very good force multipliers. Chariots, for instance, you cover them with light cav to get them in position, and you hit home with them. They're really good at breaking unit. Cetra's Chariot, which is the special unit, basically just beefed up chariots. Looks like it's just more hit points and more missile damage. Bone Giants are nuts. They are absolutely nuts. Very hard to take down. They do a good AoE attack. They have a wonderful stat line, wonderful charge. Yeah, you put these guys on the flank and support them with Ushabti or Mummies or something, Holy Sons, then you'll win that flank easily. Screaming Skull Catapult, the same as the vampire counts. Not all that great against buildings, but they do the job. If you can bring maybe 3 units of them, 2 units of them even, can take down a gate in a pinch. And then you have these Araby units. The Araby Guards, an unremarkable spearman unit. They have high morale, but they will break. Nehikarim Mortals, just basically a higher tier unit. Not as much defense. They have no precursor javelins like the Araby Guards. I've never actually... Well, in the Tomb King's campaign, I believe that you can recruit these guys. Don't quote me on that. But I know for a fact that if you're Empire and you go and seize towns in Araby, you're able to recruit these guys. So they can accentuate your army in that regard. Araby Desert Raiders, good charge, good morale. Yeah, pretty fast. They are very good light cav. Really good for supporting your heavier knights, or yeah, just your heavier knights, or reacting to enemy cav, moving skirmisher lines out of position, that kind of thing. And then there are Tomb Scorpions. Tomb Scorpions, as well as Bone Giants, are your premier line breakers. And I haven't even gotten to the elephants. But these guys, they have a wonderful charge, lots of hit points. These guys actually have a missile attack. It's not that long range, but it's there. Yeah, very hard to take down, able to dish out just an incredible amount of damage. The Giants are still a little better for the buck. Same amount of hit points, but yeah, just having that missile attack and having yeah, the price and all that, they're able to frighten enemy troops, the same as Bone Giants. Yeah, but these two guys right here, they're your line breakers. You send them in first, and you follow them up with anything else, really. You can even just add slaves to put a little bit of pressure off of them, and you'll see a return, a big return. And then Araby will provide elephants. Very straightforward. They have a bit of an AoE attack whenever they actually get into melee, but otherwise they're elephants. They function like elephants. They are line breaker units, and they're good at what they do. Then you have the Dark Elves, your Druchi. Black Art Corsairs, which are the standard infantry. Having no shield, they can kind of get whittled down pretty quick with archer fire. And considering that you will be fighting high elves, that is a problem. Don't kid yourself. They're fast, they have good morale, they can't hide, unfortunately, but they have a really good attack, and if you can get them in, preferably on a flank or the rear, yeah, they can do a lot of damage. Assassins, they have the ability to hide anywhere, and they have a very good stat line. 2 hit points, a decent missile attack. It's pretty short range, but I mean, really what you want to do is hide them on your flanks and force the enemy to deploy past them, and then engage with the assassins and your front line all at the same time. Or you can just keep them in reserve. They also make a good reserve unit if you can find the right place to deploy them. It really just depends on the terrain features that you're working with. The Witch Elves, poor armor. Nothing too crazy, really. 2 hit points, though, which is good. They can terrify enemies with their screech. They frighten nearby troops, that kind of thing. They are pretty vulnerable to missiles, though, considering they are just half-naked witch elves, and they have no shield or care in the world, really. And you have Bleak Swords, which are your sword and board unit, your frontline swordsman infantry. They can form a shield wall and because of that, they are a wonderful defensive unit to have. And they can also deal out a decent amount of damage. Not as much as the Corsairs, or the Witch Elves for that matter. Witch Elves and Corsairs are the units that you want to put on the flanks more than anything, and attack at the rear with. Then the Black Guard of Nordland. Halberdier unit, can form a spear wall, great at picking apart cavalry, if you can actually get them in. Yeah, great morale, really good armor, really good defense, just a wonderful unit for holding the line. Harganath Executioners. Good armor penetration. They have a really good charge, they have really good armor, good defense, great attack. The weapons animation on these guys is really cool. They like spin around and cut people down. Again, a great unit for the flank, if you can actually get them in and protect them. Vulnerable to missile fire, just like anybody else who doesn't have a shield. But they do have good armor, so while they're vulnerable, it takes at least a javelin. Like archers, just regular old archers, they're going to harass you, but they're not going to be as efficient as killing you as other types of weapons would, like crossbows or handguns specifically. Handguns will wreck your day with these guys. Dread Spears, your standard frontline spearman unit. Nothing spectacular, they're good at what they do, but yeah, nothing too special. Mix these guys in with the Black Guard of Nordland, and you have yourself a good front line. Dark Shards, my personal favorite Dark Elf unit. Repeating crossbows. They have a good ammo pool, not that great of range, especially when compared to the High Elves archer units and skirmish units, but they have a very high rate of fire, and it is very good against armor. So they are able to put down a group of Empire Knights, for instance, pretty quickly. It's kind of scary how quick they can chew through heavily armored units because of the fact that it's a crossbow and it's repeating. Granted, the short range means you have less engagement time to do that, so while you are firing several shots very quickly, you still have a very limited engagement range. But if you can find the good ground to put them on, where they can fire over your front line from a place of protection, or you have everybody tied down and you maneuver them onto a flank, yeah, they're really devastating. As long as you learn how to use them and how to deploy them properly, they can win battles for you. Shades can hide anywhere. They have repeating crossbows, just like the Dark Shards, and yeah, you put these guys on hold fire until you actually engage the full front of the enemy, and yeah, just out of nowhere they have repeating crossbows coming from behind them, and it's really effective. Again, as long as you deploy them properly and you capitalize on what they're built for. Dark Elf Sorceresses. They're definitely a good unit. They don't have like a dramatic AoE attack or anything like that. They're more similar to the Neckarchs and the Liches. I don't think their ammo pool is as large, and I don't think that their range is as long. They're pretty comparable though. Like the Elves and, or at least these Elves and the Neckarchs and Liches are some of the best spellcasters. I still would prefer Neckarchs to these guys, but I mean, you can't scoff at them too much. They're a really good unit. Yeah, their range is pretty impressive, though. I'm not sure who has the faster rate of fire, but I'm pretty sure that Neckarchs fire faster than these guys. But like I said, they're still a fantastic unit. Cold One Knights. They scare horses because they're riding frickin' raptors. Who wouldn't be scared of that? Really good charge, like crazy good charge. 2 hit points. Yeah, your heavy cap choice. They are very good Uh, good armor. They can stand toe-to-toe with pretty much any Empire cavalry, except for maybe Knights of the White Wolf. Yeah, but like some Inner Circle Knights or Knights of Carmine or something like that, yeah, these guys will do a good job of it, especially if you can pin cavalry units with these guys and then properly maneuver with dart shards or shades. Yeah, you get yourself a 1-2 punch that'll take care of most things. These guys are your dragons. They come in units of 10, and while they're dragons, they have incredible armor, a lot of hit points, a really strong charge, and they're very, very fast because they actually take wing and they can cover ground really quickly because of it. They make a wonderful cycle charge unit because they're so quick, so you can capitalize on that heavy charge a lot, over and over and over again, really. Wonderful generals, bodyguard unit. And yeah, they're just really hard to stop. I suppose just armor piercing, as much armor piercing as you can get to bring these guys down. Halberds also, if you just leave them to fight in a group of halberds, those halberds will eventually start killing you. But if you're just leaving these dragons at melee, you're doing it wrong. They belong on the path of cycle charging. Just hit them, get them out, hit them again, and just repeat until they're dead. Coldwind Chariots. Really heavy charge, 3 hit points. They have a missile unit, frighten nearby troops. Yeah, I don't really use them that much, but I've seen them in action, and they're pretty devastating if used properly. You get them in the rear and the flank, or you can intercept like Cav, for instance. They're excellent at chasing down skirmishers. You just run right through them, turn around, run through them again, and then that's the end of the skirmishers. Dark Riders. A skirmish one of the best skirmish cavalry, in my opinion, because of those repeating crossbows and the fact that they're mounted, which means you can maneuver onto the flank very quickly, get close even, like as close as you dare. Basically, if you have 2 units of Coldwind Knights and 2 units of Dark Riders, unless they bring a heavy amount of heavy cav, you're going to win the cavalry engagement, as long as you micro properly. You fix them with the Coldwind Knights, and then you maneuver around with Dark Shards, or the Dark Riders, I mean. And the Dark Riders will pick apart those Knights very quickly. Anything that they don't kill, your Coldwinds will be able to take care of afterwards. But again, it relies on you being able to micro. They're really good against armor, just any armor unit. And they are very good at harassing, like halberd lines, for instance, or anybody without shields. They're able to just chew through very quickly. Cauldron of Blood inspires units. I believe they come with Blackguard, these guys. Yeah, and keep your guys fighting. A lot like the Skaven Bell or the Banner of Sigmar. Reaper Bolt Throwers. Nothing too crazy. Just a ballista unit. Not very effective against walls and buildings, but, you know, they're able to impale several dudes. And, for instance, a High Elven Spear Wall. This will wreck a High Elven Spear Wall. It'll pay off in that sense, but you gotta. But it really requires you just having the right target. They'll pay off as long as you could find them the proper thing, because they may be long range. The rate of fire is not that great, just as any ballista you would expect. But yeah, like cavalry or tightly packed infantry units, they pay off in that. But if you can't find them that kind of target, then you may as well just bring more Dark Shards, or better yet, Dark Riders. And then Anaconda's Amazons. Never used them. Never actually used them in the game. They can screech, which causes terror to your enemies. They are really good at hiding in the woods, combat bonus in the wood, decent enough stat line. I don't even know where you get these guys, to be honest, at least on the campaign map. I think you can go down to Lustria, maybe? Or maybe Albion? I don't know. Moving on to the Wood Elves. I think these are Treants, I believe the name is. I think the hierarchy is Treemen, Treants, and then... Well, actually, no. Maybe these are the Treemen. I don't remember. These guys... Yeah, higher unit count. So these are your man-sized trees. We'll call them Treemen for right now, because I don't remember what their name is. They're a really good frontline unit, considering they have 2 hit points and a great stat line. Not the most incredible charge, but if you actually, like, they're built to be stuck in. You get them in the shit, and they have a high defense, high attack value. They can win most melee engagements just on their own, but they're not built to be on their own. You support them with War Dancers or Woodland Rangers, for instance, and they really, really pay off. Good morale, so that they will hold the line for a very long time, long enough for you to maneuver and do what you gotta do. But yeah, always bring them. War Dancers, really awesome animation set. They like do flips and spins and stuff. They have really cool attacks. 2 hit points, can hide anywhere, really good stat line. They're able to do a lot of damage. Yeah, really good flank unit. The Wildwood Rangers, really good defense, really good charge. They're pretty well armored for what they do. They're really hard to kill, to be honest. I think it was about 3,000 Skaven versus around 400. The majority of the Wood Elf army was these guys. So it was maybe like 2 or 3 units of these guys, and 1 of their cavalry units. And these guys would not die. They killed over 1,500 of my Skaven, and it was a city battle. So they're very good at holding streets and walls and gateways, that kind of thing. They are one of the better units of the roster. And then you have these guys who are slightly larger treemen. Just a better stat line, smaller squad, more hit points. I think they're about ogre-sized, so they function a lot like that. They make a good line breaker unit. You hit them first with these guys, follow them up with your smaller treemen, and yeah, you're able to make a hole and actually exploit it very well because of how many hit points you just brought into that line. And these guys will stick around and just wreck almost anything. They sort of have a problem with demons, just because of like high attack values, like bloodletters, for instance. If you get them stuck in with bloodletters, they will do a lot of damage. I've never seen it personally, but I imagine halberds would also have not a decent chance, really, but better than most with the Empire roster, for instance. You have Glade Guard, who are your standard archer unit. They are better than most skirmish units. While, again, they're not, like, they're a skirmish unit, so they're not, like, the best in melee. They do better than a lot of them, I've found. Better than Empire archers, for instance. Combat bonus in woods, so if you're actually fighting from a forest, then you will be doing a lot more damage, and in melee and in skirmish. The Eternal Guard, very good armor. Again, I'm pretty sure everybody has combat bonuses in the woods, except for these guys, it looks like. Yeah. A very fast cavalry unit. An alright charge. Nothing to really brag about, but I mean, they're a cavalry option. You'll definitely want to deploy them on the flank or the rear because of that. But that's kind of the point of this army, is you don't want to go with a forward assault with your elven units. That's what your treemen are for. Like, if you have to engage in a heavy frontal assault, preferably always use your treemen. Your Wildwood Rangers and your War Dancers can do that, especially your Wildwood Rangers. But War Dancers, Eternal Guard, and a few other units really built more for the flanks and outmaneuvering your opponent rather than just standing toe-to-toe, face-to-face kind of thing. Way Watchers, I believe these are also a archer unit. Really good missile attack, really long range. Again, combat bonus in the wood. Very quick, just like most elven units. Able to maneuver, run away real quick, and they're really a pain to chase and catch, because you probably won't catch them. Wild Riders, just a more elite cavalry unit. They actually have a decent charge. They're just better in every single way, except for your standard attack. So these guys are better at getting stuck in and fighting in melee, while these guys are really your shot cav. Like, you want to cycle charge them as much as you can, and don't let them get stuck in. And then you have your ints, essentially. You're just giant tree guys. They stand about as tall as giants, or even a bloodthirster. They're as tall as those guys. Crazy defense. Very, very good charge. AoE attack. Big HP pool. Yeah, they're your best unit, bar none. I mean, they can take on basically anything. I had a battle where I pinned a bloodthirster with this unit. I can't recall if I actually killed it, because the bloodthirster stats are better, and I believe they have more hit points. I think they have like 16, maybe even 30. I have so many stats going through my head right now, I don't remember. But they're comparable to a greater demon, which is essentially what they are in the lore, if I remember correctly. They're basically just a greater demon of Athelorn. So, yeah, you break a line with these guys, or just build your army around this unit, and yeah, you'll have a great time, and you'll be very effective. Glade Riders, bow and spear unit, long range, real quick, good missile attack. Not as good in melee as your Eternal Warriors, or your Eternal Guard. I mean, not a shot cav, but they're not supposed to be either of those things. This is your skirmish cavalry. They do really well in that role. Really good range, so utilize them like that, and yeah, you'll get a return on your investment. And then they also can recruit Anaconda's Amazons. Now we have the High Elves. Not much has changed since Rage of the Dark Gods. High Elf Spears, just your standard frontline infantry, conform shield wall. Not spectacular in a lot of ways, but you can rely on them. They're good at forming that front line. The Swordmasters of Hoeth, good armor penetration, good attack values, decent enough charge. Nothing real crazy, but you get them stuck in, and yeah, they'll kill a lot of people for you. Lothern Sea Guard, equipped with pikes and swords, large shields. They also have a bow, so they have a small ammo count, but they have a bow. So they're a skirmish unit that's able to defend themselves with a sword and a spear. Very rare, very versatile unit. Always good to have them. Though they are kind of a stopgap, really. I mean, you could just bring more spearmen or archers instead of these guys, and then you would have a more effective either of those. I don't think... Yeah, they have a slightly better stat line. Just ever so slightly better stat line than the High Elf Spears. And... yeah, they have the same missile damage as your High Elf Archers. But the High Elf Archers have more ammo. So, it's really up to you. And it works in the versatility of what they do, but... yeah, I can take them or leave them. Phoenix Guard, very heavily armored halberd unit. Great at taking down cavalry or large creatures. If you're going to fight ogres or trolls or anything like that, you'll want these guys in your army. And you'll want to pick the right target for these guys. I mean, if you're just in a frontline fight with these dudes, they definitely fill that role and they'll be good at it. But they're more useful in fighting the more elite units, like Blood Dragons, or Ushabti, or Black Orcs. These guys are really good at fighting Black Orcs. Then you have White Lions. Very good charge. Really good armor. Yeah, they're pretty much just better than the Swordmasters of Hoeth, just stat-wise. They pair very well together, so you put them together on a flank, charge in the White Lions, then charge in the Swordmasters, and yeah, the Swordmasters can pin, pull out the White Lions, go for another charge if you're feeling saucy. Other than that, yeah, they're a fairly straightforward unit. Big axe. High Elf Archers. Very long range, very accurate. They're elves with bows, so naturally they do a lot of damage at range. Shadow Warriors. Again, elves with bows. They are the best elven archers, as it says in the top. They're very quick. They can hide. They get combat bonuses from the woods. They have a decent enough defense, like they actually can stand up in melee to a lot of different units. Still not their preferred engagement, but you get them hidden somewhere, get a good angle on your enemy, and yeah, you'll be doing a lot of damage from range. The High Elf Mages of Safari, they fire bolts. Instead of the it seems the majority of spellcasters in this game tend to fire a variant of the flamethrower. If you remember the Byzantine, the Greek fire thrower from Medieval Two Kingdoms, it's a variation of that. So it's like a spray of energy that has a slight arc to it. Your neck arcs, liches, sorceresses, grey seers, shamans. I actually think all of them do, to a certain extent. They just have different textures on them. The Bright Wizards have more of a trebuchet quality to their projectile. But these guys have a ballista-like quality to their missiles. So they'll be firing bolts of energy that are just like big balls of almost electricity, it looks like, that can penetrate several different units in a rank. They have a very good range. They have a decent enough rate of fire and a decent enough ammo pool, so they're very, very good at what they do. You put them on a flank and fire down the enemy line as it's engaged, and you'll kill a spectacular number of units. You have silver helms, heavy cavalry that are really, really fast, surprisingly, for the stat line that they have and how armored they are. Most heavy cavalry will not move as fast as these guys at all. I think the only guys that trump these are the mounted demonettes, and I don't believe they have as high a defense as these guys. I could be wrong about that, and the demonettes have more HP, as in more than one. I think they might have like 3 or 2. But yeah, because they're so fast, they're very good at cycle charging. So if you can, again, if you can find the right engagement and make these guys fight units that is appropriate to their stats, for instance, lower tier units, really, like if you can pin Empire Spearmen or Marauders from the Chaos units or the Chaos factions, any kind of Beastman unit, for instance, you cycle charge into the rear of the flank of those guys, you'll pay off with little casualties on your silver helms, and they're very good at cycle charging because of their speed. Tyrannok chariots, your standard chariot unit, they can wreck units with their charge. 3 hit points. They have missiles on board, so they function like a stopgap skirmish unit. It's not what they're best at because of the squad size, so they're not really putting out that much fire, even though they have a decent ammo pool and good range. But against other skirmish cavalry, they're actually pretty decent if you support them in some way, mainly because of their hit points. And they just get them to charge in. That's really just the best way to use them. Skirmish for a little while until you can find a gap to deploy them, and then drive them home and break the line with them. Dragon Princes of Kalador. Again, very quick unit, which is just kind of the theme for the Elves. Sorry, I had to yawn. The Elves are boring. Not necessarily boring, I don't play them that much. The roster is, as you can see, relatively small compared to the most factions, especially when we get into the Empire roster. But anyway, Dragon Princes Kalador. They are a very heavy cavalry unit. Surprisingly quick for how armored they are, just like the Silver Helms. Really good charge, really good defense. Yeah, they have the heavy cavalry role pinned pretty well. But they're nothing compared to high dragons. 6 hit points, 50 defense, 24 charge, 20 attack. Excellent against armor units. Very fast, as with everything, but these guys especially because they're a flying unit. They are insane. You cycle charge with these guys and they will just rip apart anybody. And because they fly and they're so quick, it's really hard to pin them down and kill them. So if you just pay attention, you will have the right engagement for these guys for the majority of the fight, which means you're going to be really efficient at killing units. You just gotta pay attention and micro these guys properly, and they will pay off better than anything in your army. In most armies, really. Illyrian Reavers, Horse Archers, good range. They're Elven Archers, which is already a plus, but they're also mounted, so they're even quicker, which is ridiculous. So these guys are just a pain to chase and catch. You really gotta have prepared for that kind of engagement. So, if your light cavalry has been whittled down over the course of the fight, and then you have to chase these guys down to end the fight, you're gonna have a bad time, because they will just run away and shoot you, and they're good at it. And then you have your Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower. Not too great against walls, decent enough against gates if you bring like a unit, 2 units, 3 units of them. Can at least get the gate open for you. Yeah, standard ballista unit, really. They're just good at impaling several units. So aim at the tightest concentration of infantry, or they're also a good way to pick off heavy cav at range if you don't have sorcerers. But yeah, that's the Elves. Next is the Lizardmen. Pretty small roster for now. They are not incredibly functional on the campaign map, which is why I haven't done any gameplay of them on the campaign, that is. I've done a few custom battles featuring them, but in the next version I'm definitely going to be playing them on the campaign. The Lustria map looks absolutely gorgeous. I love all the models for all of these units, and I really look forward to actually playing a campaign, invading the old world and Becks of Turtles with these guys. Come on, that'll be awesome. For your bodyguard, you have the Temple Guard. Just a solid infantry unit all around, a solid heavy infantry unit. Really good defense, good charge, decent attack. They do suffer from not having more than 1 hit point, which kind of sucks. But, I mean, you have several different ways to mitigate that, such as Sauruses. They're your standard heavy infantry unit. I wouldn't say they're the core of the unit, but in a lot of ways they are. Yeah, good charge, good armor, decent enough morale. Yeah, a couple of units of these guys with your Temple Guard, and you have a really solid infantry line. Then you have Skinks. I would call these the core of your army, to be honest. You want to bring a lot of them. They can hide in high grass. They have alright morale. They'll get picked apart by missiles, and their stat line isn't that great, but there's 251 of them. And you'll have a lot of them over the course of the campaign. Very cheap to recruit, to maintain. Everything else I found is built around supporting these guys as they form a battle line of any length, because there's so many of them. But they can be, if you want an army of Sauruses and just a few of these, they also make a really good support unit, considering just how good they are at pinning things down. You keep your general close to keep them in check, and yeah, they'll do their job well. Then there are Kroxigors. Kroxigors are fantastic because they have 7 hit points and a really good stat line. They can Warcry to improve everything further. They have just a really good charge, very good armor. They're ogre sized, so they're basically just your ogre-like unit. They are capable of going toe-to-toe with rat ogres, trolls. Yeah, they're great at bogging down heavy cav. So, for instance, you let these guys take the charge from enemy heavy cavalry, and then you just swarm them with skinks, and then that's a dead cavalry unit. Then you have skink priests, which which are functionally like the high elf mages, in that they fire a ballista-like projectile. So you'll be seeing a lot of good penetration damage if you fire into tightly ranked units, like a shield wall, for instance, or a phalanx. 2 hit points. They are vulnerable to missile fire because they have a small squad size. So, like high elf archers, for instance, or Ungles, like any mounted skirmisher, really, will, if they pick these guys out and focus them down, then you just lost a very expensive, very powerful unit. But if you take care of them and deploy them properly, they will wreak havoc on your enemy. Skink archers, not spectacular archers by any means. They're themselves vulnerable to missiles, but that's mitigated slightly by their high unit size. There's 250 of them. And yeah, there's nothing too special about them, but they're able to put out a metric shit ton of fire because of how large their squad size is. So, always a good idea to bring a couple of units of these. Cold One Cavalry, your Lizardmen cavalry option for the roster. Good charge, can warcry. They scare enemy cavalry, horses I should say. Yeah, decent armor, decent attack for if they get stuck in. But you're not going to really want to have these guys go in a full tilt charge against another enemy cav unit. They're a lot like the Dark Elf Cold One Cavalry, in that you want to put them on a flank or the rear for the more advantageous charge. So, for instance, pin them with Croxagores or Skinks, and yeah, just run them down with the cold ones. Then there's Stegodons. Stegodons will inspire your troops. They have an AoE attack, so they'll be killing multiple units per attack. They don't attack very quickly, especially compared to like a Bloodthirster, for instance, for other units that have an AoE attack. But they do have a very high HP pool, really good defense, really good attack, really good charge. Yeah, always a good idea to bring these guys, just because they're a very good fulcrum for your army to pivot around. So, yeah, not necessarily to plan around these guys, but they're a wonderful counter for enemy heavy cav or special units like ogres or rat ogres, trolls, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, very good unit. They can be killed though, so don't think they're invincible just because they're big old dinosaurs. Halberds, storm vermin, for instance, with halberds, they're able to do a lot of damage to them. Yeah, anything with a bonus against cavalry. Pikes also do a wonderful job of killing these guys. Spellcasters will wreck your day. Yeah. Really good roster, even though it's kind of small. Really look forward to playing them in the next version on the campaign. Next we have the Dwarves. We have Troll Slayers and Giant Slayers. Giant Slayers are just Slayers, but with a slightly better stat line. Smaller charge, but they get the Giant Slayers can get stuck in easier. Like, they just have an easier time in melee than the Troll Slayers. And I believe the Troll Slayers have two-handed weapons, so their charge is actually a little better. Not by much, but they each have 2 HP. yeah, you put these guys in a fight with armor units, for instance, trolls, giants. You just put them into the most dangerous fight on the field, and they won't necessarily come out on top every time, but they will do a lot of damage. Quarrelers, crossbow unit, shield in the back. They can actually pull out a shield and a hammer, do a decent enough job in melee. Don't want to be your front line unit by any means, but they can deploy stakes, and yeah, most of the dwarf army is built to just pick a spot and stay there, and just shoot the hell out of the enemy, force them to come to them, kind of thing. But if they actually do make it to your door in crossbows, it won't be as easy as dealing with other skirmish units from other factions. Thunders, really good muskets with these guys. Really good range, really good accuracy. A lot of damage to armor units. This is your main option for dealing with enemy heavy cavalry or heavy infantry. Especially like Chaos Halberdiers, for instance. Halberdiers not having a shield and having heavy armor. Crossbows can do a bit of work on them, but you're gonna want Thunderers to deal with that more than anything. They're just a solid skirmish unit. Dwarf Rangers, basically Quarrelers with two-handed axes rather than sword and shield, or hammer and shield. Again, not as good as actual infantry on the line, but they're not built for that. They're a skirmish unit that can defend themselves better than most skirmish units can. Iron Drakes, relatively short range flamethrower unit, basically. They have a really high defense because of how crazy armored they are. They can just chew through enemy heavy armor because of their attack. Pretty much shoot through anything, really. I mean, you just make sure that they stay out of melee, where they will be able to take a lot of hits, but you won't be utilizing your flamethrower, so it's kind of they're kind of useless at that point. And that's actually the way you want to fight them. If you can pin them down with literally any unit at all, then you may not necessarily be able to kill them quickly in melee, but at least you'll be, not on fire, which is always a good thing, I hear. Miners function a lot like Neptune units, where they just throw explosive ammunition, like javelins, over your line, and just essentially fire pots, but different. I think they're more just like grenades. Dwarven warriors with two-handed axes. Good on a charge. Decent enough at holding a line. Nothing spectacular. Put them on a flank, and put them on a flank and charge. Don't let it get pinned down for too long. Otherwise, you just want to bring some Dwarven warriors, which are your standard infantry. They can form a shield wall. They have shields and axes, or hammers. And they're a very solid infantry choice. They can form a really strong front line, and they'll hold the line for a very long time. They have very good morale. Just don't let them get overwhelmed. Bugman's Rangers. An elite unit. I've not actually used them very well. I don't know what kind of javelins they throw. I would imagine they would throw axes, but I could be wrong about that. Decent enough stat line. Really good defense. More attack than your standard warrior. There's Longbeards, which are your higher tiered warriors. More defense, better equipment, can make a shield wall, very well armored. Not that great of an attack still, slightly better than warriors, but they are there to fill the defensive role. You really don't want to get caught in the open field as dwarves. You want to force them to fight you on your terms, which usually means getting them to attack you in a Karak, where you have the most advantage. So putting these guys, they can hold a wall very well, they can hold gateways very well, city streets, just any kind of choke point, really. On a bridge fight, these guys are invaluable. They will do a lot to help you there. There's also longbeards with axes. Just a better attack all around. Still not a spectacular charge, but they are better just in straight melee than your normal dwarven axes. So you want to get them... They're your actual killing unit. Don't just let them take a charge and then sit there and fight in melee. Actually be aggressive with these guys and put them somewhere that they can do some damage. Then your hammers. Basically longbeards with axes, except higher defense. No, they don't have a higher defense. Slightly smaller defense, but a higher charge. They also have one less attack. So, yeah, these are your charge units. Get them on the flank and charge them in. If you have to cycle charge with anything, cycle charge with these guys. But the dwarves are very slow, so you probably don't want to cycle charge all that often. A very good counter charge unit. So, let's say that you have the high ground. Think like a crocodile. Don't chase the unit down or run an excessive distance to the unit. Just wait for them to charge up to you, and then just countercharge at the last second with these guys. Follow them up with some longbeard with axes, or just dwarven axes. Then you have iron breakers. Very high defense. These are your top tier line holding unit. I don't know if they can form a shield wall or not. I want to say they can. I might be wrong about that, but either way, they are the unit that you want more than any other unit to hold the line in the Dwarven roster. You put them in the far left or the far right, and yeah, you'll have that flank held down really securely. I believe this is the Doom Anvil? The Anvil of Doom? Whatever you call it. It's as close as you're going to get to a spellcaster unit in this roster for the dwarves. They have a really crazy range. They are very accurate. They are pinpoint accurate, actually. I'm pretty sure they hit what they're going to hit every time. And it has a very high, like just a big old pie plate of AoE. But it's a very long reload time, so you're not going to be seeing too much of it. And I think that its ammo count is actually relatively low. But yeah, they're a great unit sniper because of their range and precision. So take care of it, and it will take care of you. Great beards with two-handed axes. Pretty much the ultimate melee unit. Charge them in, and they will do a lot of damage on the charge and continue to do a lot of damage. 2 hit points, so they have a lot of longevity. Really high defense, very good armor. Decent enough stamina, but yeah. They're a lot like the hammers. You don't want to run them all over the place, but if you can countercharge with them, they'll pay off pretty decently. Then you have the Elders. One of my favorite units in the game, really. 2 HP, really good armor, really good attack. Not really the charging type, but they are great on the flanks or in the center, just because they have pistols as well as 2 axes. They dual wield. So their armor and their HP allows them to take a charge really well, and their equipment allows them to dish out a lot of damage. So if you're about to be charged down, those guys will probably end up taking at least 1 volley from these guys and their pistols, and they have really good armor penetration on those guns because they're dwarven firearms, and they're just really good make. And after they take the charge, yeah, they can do a lot of damage with their melee weapons. Again, don't really want to go chasing anything with these guys. It's true of the whole roster. You really want to bring them into a fight. You want to draw them into an engagement using your ranged units, which we're about to get into. And then there's the Bugman's XXX Keg. A family heirloom. It inspires nearby troops. It's just really, really good ale. And they'll keep fighting as long as they have ale. Dwarven bolt throwers, standard ballista unit, nothing spectacular. Grudge throwers, good with attacking walls. Pretty good rate of fire. Decent enough AoE attack, nothing spectacular. Good morale, good range. Yeah, as far as catapults go, there are a few that are better. Dwarven mortar. This is the preferred artillery unit in my opinion, just because they can fire over your main dwarven line of shield walls. Yeah, good AoE, really good range. I mean, it's a mortar. What do you expect? It's a very long range artillery piece. Dwarf cannon. Can use explosive shot, can use grape shot, and standard shot as well, of course. Your best option for taking down walls quickly. With the grape shot, as long as you can time everything properly, you'll be doing a lot of damage at close range with that. But you have to deploy them on your front line, of course. You can also deploy them on the flanks for that. But, be wary of cavalry. It's really good to bring a mix of mortars and cannons. For no other reason than just grape shot. And I think that cannons actually have a tiny bit longer range, so you can use them more effectively to pull the enemy off of high ground, for instance, or just pulling them into attacking you rather than you marching off and attacking them, because the dwarves hate moving, as I've said. Then there's the flame cannon, which function like the Iron Drakes except in cannon form. They have it's like a shotgun effect of flame instead of just one flame like the Iron Drakes. So they'll be firing several different jets out of the front of this thing, and it fans out and it does a lot of damage. Very high reload time though, so if you can engage the enemy line and then maneuver this thing into position to fire, that's where you get your best results. Or just putting them right on the front to where you can get at least the one good volley and then counter charge with whatever dwarven unit you have there. Then you have the organ gun. Not as good against buildings, but it's built to take down infantry. Oh, wait. Yeah, the Doom Anvil, or the Anvil of Doom is here. Then who the hell are these guys? Oh, this is Gotrex. Yeah, this is, I think that's how you say his name, Gotrex. Just a hero unit. Good amount of hit points, really good defense, hard to kill, high attack. Yeah, that's the Anvil of Doom. Organ gun, yeah, high reload time, but they fire off a lot of units at once, or fire off a lot of rounds at once. Never used it that much. I really just prefer to bring cannons and mortars in my Dwarven army. But yeah, if you learn how to use it, it's really effective. Anvil of Doom, I shall skip over just because I've already talked about it. But yeah, bring it. Don't use it against walls, though. It sucks against walls. Then there's Long Drong's Slayer Pirates. Pirates who are slayers, slayers who are pirates. They have 2 hit points, they have a pistol, and they have a good stat line. So, yeah, bring them if you can. Norse Dwarf Warriors. They're your Viking dwarves. Slightly better in most respect. They have a sword rather than an axe. Can form shield wall. Yeah, just a solid dwarf infantry. Only recruitable in Norska. Prince Ulther's Dragon Company. I don't know about the lore about these guys, but they're just a heavily armored unit with a decent charge, but they're really built to just get stuck in. So they have high defense, higher than Dwarf Warriors, I believe. Yeah, much higher. Attack value. So yeah, these guys make wonderful frontline infantry, heavy infantry. You'll definitely want to nab them if you can. And then you have access to ogre units, as well as Norskin dwarf crossbows. What it says on the tin, just dwarves with crossbows. Not as good as quarrelers, I don't think, considering they don't have a shield, I believe. They might have a shield, can't really tell. I actually think they do. Yeah. But again, can only get them in Norska. Now we get into the Empire factions. Here we have Reikland, your swordsmen, which are your professional, actually aggressive unit. This is the unit that you want to do your killing, so put them on the flanks and engage them after your halberds and spears have pinned down the enemy. There's a lot of room to upgrade the armor, so they can end up being very heavily armored. Then you have Nordland Marines, light infantry, really quick, really good attack. Not really meant to be charged in, but they can function really well on their own on the flanks with their pistol and sword. So maneuver them around, shoot into the enemy a couple times, and then get them stuck in, and they'll do pretty decently in melee. Not the highest defense, but they have pretty decent attack. Then there are the Halberdiers. Halberdiers are an invaluable unit for the Imperial roster. They're able to take down most threats if you fully upgrade them and support them properly. Really good at fighting cavalry, so like Chaos Knights, for instance, if they charge into these guys, they're going to have a bad day. Most units on horseback are going to have a bad day. Even a lot of special units are going to have a bad day, like ogres and trolls and stuff. Most of the Empire units have a variety of tiers for armor, so they start off nothing special, but if you can equip them with heavy armor, then they become something a lot more potent. The Empire also has access to several dwarf and elf units, so you can recruit dwarven warriors if you have a dwarven commune. I forget what it's called. Basically, in your town, if you have a community within your town that is dwarven population, you can recruit these guys. A good buffer unit for their shield wall and all that. They are really good at mixing in with spears and halberds. Standard Imperial Spearmen. I use them mostly as a garrison unit. Can form shield wall. Not as good against cavalry as your halberds, but, you know, they definitely do the job. Dwarven axes. Also, really good thing to bring to an Imperial army, just because of their attack value and their morale. I believe their morale is better than most Empire guys. Yeah. Altdorf Honor Company, just a better halberd unit. Recruitable at Altdorf, as it says. Yeah, the Empire has a lot of unique units like this. A lot of flavor to the army. So, for instance, if you have a halberd line made entirely of these guys, then they will be very unique. The Empire is very good at making your armies feel unique because of these named units, and I love the variety. Having a general that is really impressive and has been winning many battles, having them, giving them the honor of leading the Altdorf Honor Company of Honor, whatever you want to call it. Having that army built around, these are my elite guys. These are the tough dudes. So you have these guys, Kerber greatswords, warrior priests, wizards, all the special units. It's really cool to build that elite army out of these special units. Then you have greatswords. Really high morale, really good defense, really good attack, decent enough charge, nothing spectacular. Actually, I think the Dwarves beat them by 1. But these are the guys that you want engaging trolls and giants and such instead of halberdiers. If you have the extra halberdiers to throw at them, then yeah, that's always a good thing. But your halberdiers are more of your frontline guys, and your greatswords are going to be your reactionary force, or your flanking units. So, like, if some trolls come in on your flank, then meet them with your greatswords. You'll actually do some damage. You'll take some casualties, but you'll actually do some damage, or you stand a better chance of doing damage. Or if some ogres crash through your front line of halberds, you reinforce that halberd line with these guys. It's really just about finding them the right engagement. You want to save the tough jobs for these guys. Those guys, and also your Kerber greatswords, which are essentially exactly the same, except for different equipment set, and ever so slightly better stats. Just ever so slightly. I think they just have 1 more charge and 1 more defense. Yeah. And they fill essentially the same role. Then there's the dismounted Reiksguard halberdiers. Really heavy army, or armor, I should say. Excellent against cavalry because of it. So, yeah, they're kind of the ultimate frontline troop for the Reikland army. Very hard to take down. They don't have more than 1 HP, but they have a really good defense and really high armor value. And they have halberds, so they're able to shoot through most cavalry units and other infantry. Sons of Manon. I'm not too sure about the lore of these guys. I think Manon is a sea god worshipped in Marienburg. Yeah, another heavy infantry. Really good armor. Better than the Reiksguard, even. I didn't know that. Slightly less attack, slightly higher charge, though. So these... I've never seen them in action, but they seem pretty good stat-wise. They seem to be just an alternative unit to the Reiksguard. And then you have dismounted Reiksguard with sword and board. They will function a lot like your Empire swordsmen, but they are just all around better in melee. So they start out with higher armor, and their attack values are just not like spectacular. They're just good. They're a solid heavy infantry unit. And then you have High Elven Spears. High Elven Spears are... I wonder how they fare. 8, 16... Just wow, near double the defensive value of your Empire Spears, so there's that. They're also very quick to move into position, so while you may want to stick with Empire troops to form the core of your army, having some Elven units there as a reactionary force is definitely a good idea, so they can quickly move into position on a flank, or past a flank even, and deploy that shield wall. Then you have Warrior Priests of Ulrich. Inspire nearby troops. They can chant to inspire. 5 hit points. Really high defense, really high attack, really good charge. This is a really, really good unit. Easily overwhelmed, though, because of there only being 10 units in the group. But honestly, you don't want to keep them. You don't want them to be alone in the first place. You stick these guys with a unit of great swords, or Reiklands, or Reiksguard swordsmen, or dwarf axes, literally any other unit, and they're a force multiplier in that sense. One of the best, if not the best, option to engage special units in melee. While units with special attacks, if they're just fighting these guys, like the units with, like Stegodons, for instance, anybody with AoE attacks, the Arachnarok spiders, the giant spiders, because they can attack all 10 of them essentially at the same time, those 5 hit points mean less, but they still have a really high defense. So, like trolls or giants or Kroxigors or rat ogres, these are a really good option for that, especially if you have any kind of support at all. Halberds, spears of any kind. And then the Warrior Priests of Sigmar, which is basically the same thing except a different god. I believe Ulrich is the warrior god, which was worshipped before Sigmar, and Sigmar is just the god of the Empire. Yeah, functionally very similar, both of them. They just give variety, give you a theme to your army. Empire crossbows. The plentiful, cheap way of dealing with armor. Moderate rate of fire, moderate range. Decent enough at attacking armor units. Things with heavy armor and shields are going to suffer. You're going to have a harder time, I'm trying to say. Like with Chaos Knights, for instance, the crossbows will definitely do damage, but you're still going to want firearms to take them down. But things like Chaos Halberdiers, for instance, with heavy armor and no shield, and they're slow-moving, not mounted, crossbows will do a lot of damage, a whole lot of damage. Graveguard, for instance, like the Graveguard Halberds, or your Blood Dragons, even. They'll have a little less success with Blood Dragons, just because their armor is kind of atrocious, but they'll do a lot of damage. Just gotta pick the right target. Empire Archers, pretty ludicrous range, to be honest. I'm always surprised at how long of range the Empire Archers have. They can deploy stakes, not very good armor penetration, just by nature of them being bows, but for the, God, that scared the shit out of me. But for the, amount of fire that they put out, I'll just put myself offline here. But for the amount of fire that they put out, yeah, they're really good with dealing with other skirmishers, for instance. They can pick apart zombies pretty decently. Like if you have multiple types of skirmisher units, say that you have 2 units of handguns and 2 units of archers, and you have to whittle down those zombies, you'll definitely want to use the archers over your handguns to whittle down the zombies, just because you want to prioritize your fire that way. Your archers won't be able to deal with the same threats that your handguns could deal with. Your handguns can deal with basically everything, but still, their armor and their time, their engagement time, is better suited to dealing with other threats, higher priority threats. So, use the high rate of fire in the long range on the archers to whittle down your chaff units of the opponent, like Skaven slaves, or zombies, or skinks in the Lizardmen army, and save your crossbows and your handguns for like actual heavy infantry and heavy cavalry. They pair very well with high elf archers. The high elf archers are just better in every respect. And yeah, I mean, they're archers. What more can be said? Quarrelers and thunderers also are a wonderful choice for any Empire army. Skipped over handguns. Handguns are another personal favorite, just because I like having muskets and arquebusiers and whatever you want to call them. Not as good as the thunderers, so like a couple of units of thunderers will be a good choice to help supplement your gun line. But then you have the Hochland long rifles, Master Engineers. They are very accurate, very, very long range, very good against armor. They are a literal sniper unit. So if you have them posted anywhere on the high ground, then you will have a very good return investment with these guys. Chosen, especially Khorne Chosen, because they don't have shields, will just get absolutely mauled by this unit. They will whittle them down very quickly. Same with Chaos Halberdiers. A good choice for attacking trolls and ogres and other other special units, big units. Anything short of, I think, giants, really. They can deal a lot of damage to, just because they're so accurate and their range is so high. Shadow Warriors, Elven Archers, again, having Dwarven and Elven units in the roster really helps with the more specialized engagements. So, for instance, just special units like trolls and ogres and whatnot. Like, if you can have reactionary forces centered around dwarves and elves built to hunt down those kinds of units, they excel in that sense. Really though, I don't bring many dwarven and elven units in my Empire army. If I wanted them, I'd go play the dwarves or the elves. But you know, some generals I like to roleplay that they have good relations with one or the other. Never both in the same army though, because that's just wrong. It's wrong. Then there's repeater handguns. Master Engineers with repeater handguns. One of the most potent units in the Empire army. They have a ludicrous fire rate, very good against armor. Not that great of range, but I mean, if you take care of them and you deploy them properly, either on really good ground or on the flanks, or you just babysit them, like you have them in the front and then you pull them back kind of thing, they'll really pay off for you. They're capable of dishing out a lot of damage, a whole lot of damage. Absolutely chew through Chaos Knights, even Blood Dragons. Just the volume of fire that they're able to put out, especially in this mod, because you're able to actually build all of these units, and you don't have to rely on scripted events where you're just like, hey, the Emperor likes you, so here's a unit of whatever. You can actually build a skirmish line entirely of these guys. So having like 3 or 4 units of these guys forming up your skirmish line is devastating, especially if you have cannons or long rifles to draw them in. So yeah, lovely unit. Love these guys. Reiksguard Knight Bodyguard, your standard general's bodyguard. Really heavy cavalry, fantastic charge, really good defense. They will get stuck in and they will stay in for a very long time. Always a good choice. Knights Carmine, they're more of a melee-centric cavalry, so not necessarily a great charge, but once you get them stuck in, they'll be able to do a lot of damage afterwards. Next up is the Blackguard of Moor. Just a solid heavy cavalry unit. They have these really cool sais that they use. And they're all in black, which is always nice. Aside from that, they're just another knightly order. I mean, they have the Empire has so many heavy cav choices that they kind of just blend together after a little while. There's slight differences between most of them, but for instance, the Knights of Carmine are one of the more unique ones, just because they have such a high attack value, so they're really built for melee. But yeah, the Blackguards of Moor, always a good choice. All of these guys are a wonderful choice. Knights of the Gold Lion, the Empire's finest, apparently. Again, and just a very heavily armored cavalry unit. Knights Panther, very similar. With slight stat differences. Higher charge value than the Knights of Moor. Knights of the Blazing Sun. Again, just a very good all-around heavy cav unit. Inner Circle Knights. Knights of the Bull. Slightly less charge, but I mean, they make up for that for how heavy they are. The Reiksguard. Higher attack than average, still not on par with the Knights of Carmine. And then there's the new unit of the Demigryph Knights. The Demigryph Knights have half of the squad size, but just their stat line is absolutely fantastic. They have about the same attack as all of the other knights, but their charge is not necessarily double that, but just definitely higher. And they also have a very good defense and 3 hit points, which means they have a lot of staying power. They can shrug off a lot of ranged fire, and they can keep cycle charging. They're also really fast. So they're up there with the peak of what the Empire can bring to the table in terms of cavalry. And then there's Knights of the White Wolf, one of my personal favorite units. Really good armor penetration, really good attack value, like they rival the Knights of Carmine. Oh, no, they don't. Well, they have armor penetration, and the Knights of Carmine don't, but yeah, they still have a really good charge, which the Knights of Carmine do not. I'm pretty sure they have the best charge out of any cavalry. Yeah, they even trump Demigryphs, which I think is a little strange, to be honest, but they are guys on heavy cav. They are heavy cav with two-handed hammers, so I don't know. It kind of makes sense, I suppose. Then there's Griffins, which are a new flying unit. A defense of 50, 6 hit points. They inspire nearby troops. They're really effective against armor, and they are the ultimate cycle charge unit for the Empire. So you get them in, you can maneuver them to a flank very quickly, you could charge in real quick, you could pull out, charge, and yeah, you just do that over and over again until your enemy's dead, basically. Conqueror Steam Tank, 10 hit points, very high defense, a very high charge. They are able to squash smaller units by just running over them. Their cannon is very accurate, good range, good ammo capacity, good rate of fire. All around, it's a protective artillery piece that doesn't really need to fear being charged, but all that said, it's not invincible, so you still want to deploy it and take care of it, and don't rely on it completely, but you can definitely allow, like for instance, the Tomb King's Scorpions, a single steam tank can stand toe-to-toe with a group of Tomb King's Scorpions. I've seen it before, and they do it well. They may not necessarily be able to kill them, but they can hold them and pin them until you can get something else over to react to the situation. Then you have Pistoliers. Pistoliers are a must, I think, with any army. They are the go-to skirmish unit on horseback for the Empire roster. They have good morale. They are effective against armor. They're quick. They're light. They cause morale damage because they have firearms. One of my favorite things about these Pistoliers is in Rage of the Dark Gods. I haven't actually done it in this mod because I've mainly been playing Vampire Counts and Chaos Undivided. But if you take Pistoliers against a Beastman stack, if you take those Pistoliers and send them out ahead of your army and bait the Minotaurs to chase them, they will never catch them, and they will constantly get shot at by the Pistoliers. They are a very, very good way of dealing with Minotaurs, because Minotaurs may charge without orders, I believe. At least they did with when I encountered them. And because they have a decent morale, and not, like, Minotaurs aren't unbreakable, several times I've seen Minotaurs at half strength start to run just because they can't catch the Pistoliers that are shooting them and killing them. So as soon as they start to run, you just turn those Pistoliers, charge them in, and cut down the Minotaurs. And there you go, your Minotaur problem is done. And usually they're out in the countryside somewhere way away from the battle because the Minotaurs have been chasing them for so long. Then there's the War Altar of Sigmar, which is just a platform with, I forget what kind of halberd unit. It might be Reichsguard, it might be Altdorf Company, I can't remember. But the War Altar of Sigmar is just there to inspire your troops. You keep it close to your front line, and your front line will not break. You have Empire Mortars, Empire Cannons, which are your more quote-unquote basic artillery unit. Mortars are always a good thing to bring. Fire over walls, so they're a great defensive unit. They can intercept siege towers and rams and destroy them before they get to the wall, which is always handy. In the field, with enemies like the Skaven or the Orcs, they're invaluable in their ability to fire at long range and cause area attack. Or area damage, I should say. While the cannons have a lot of variety. You keep them on solid shot or normal shot so that you can accurately take down things like trolls or bloodthirsters, for instance, or giants, or anything that's big and scary, really. I mean, if you have 2 or 3 units of these guys, and you absolutely have to kill something before it reaches your line, you stand a pretty decent chance of doing that. It won't work all the time, in which case you could always switch to grape shot, maybe do the job, but even then, if there's not something along those lines to target, you can switch to explosive shot and cause some AoE damage. to help your mortars do their thing. Always a good idea to bring those. Hellstorm Rocket Battery, which are just the perfect anti-horde unit. They can fire at very long range. They have a very high spread of damage, and they just cause havoc amongst the enemy line. If you find them the right ground, and that's really true of all artillery units, if you just find them the right ground to stand on, they will move the world, and they will just destroy everything. Same with the Hellblaster Volley Gun. The Hellblaster Volley Gun does better on the front line, just because it has a decent range, and it fires so quickly. Just huge swaths of the enemy will be taken down per volley. Always a good idea to bring them. Really, just the Empire artillery is some of the best, some of my favorite in action. They have access to Araby Guard. You have to actually conquer an Araby town in order to recruit them. Brigands, I don't know where you can recruit them, but they're just bandits, essentially, mercenaries. They might be from Estalia or Tilea. Black Avengers, high morale, vulnerable to missiles. Basic swordsman unit. I'm pretty sure they're like pirates or bandits or something like that. Free Company, a good stopgap unit. If you don't have enough swordsmen, then you can swing by one of your cities and just take some of these guys, because the majority of your settlements can build Free Company, and they function a lot like militia. Not very heavily armored, not very impressive stat-wise, but they can meet shield pretty effectively. They can hold the line long enough for you to maneuver. They're archers. The archer variant of Free Company is a lot more useful in my opinion, just because they're archers and they fulfill the skirmish role, and they're pretty comparable to Empire archers. But yeah, as far as like their purpose, I'd say militia is what these Free Company are good at. Very good at garrison duty, very good at protecting artillery parks. Well, not very good, but they're able to hold artillery parks long enough for something else to react. So, just always a good choice. If you're short on money or you need something immediately, you can most likely find Free Company, and you just gotta learn how to use them. Munt's Outlaw Infantry, definitely better than Free Companies, but they're bandits. I don't know how you would recruit them. Like I said, I haven't really played much of the Empire. I might start an Empire playthrough here in the next couple of minutes, to be honest, but yeah, they seem like a pretty good infantry unit. I don't see a shield, which is definitely a detractor, but still, they're basically Free Company. From what it looks like, just a better version, almost. I was about to say twice as good, but yeah, they just have better stat lines. Border Prince's Infantry. If you're in Border Princess land and you retake some of them, they function basically as mercenary units. So you would take a Border Princess town, and then you're able to recruit these guys. Same thing with the Araby Infantry. Van Crump's Buccaneers. Again, no idea where you actually get these guys. I'm assuming... I mean, Buccaneers, they sound like pirates. So, probably Certosa, I think, is the pirate island. But somewhere in Tilea or Estalia or something like that, one of the rebel settlements on the campaign map, you get the place, and then you're able to recruit these special units. And they have a shield, which is always a good thing to have. And they can hide in long grass, which is pretty useful. And Warcry, also useful. Pirates. Bloodthirsty Infantry. 2 hit points. That's interesting. And they inspire nearby troops. That's kind of strange. They have missiles. I'm assuming they have like pistols or something maybe. Not a very miraculous stat line, but I imagine they must be cheap. Flagellants. Flagellants are an interesting unit. While their stat line is nothing spectacular, they are very hard to break. I don't think I've ever seen an actual unit of these guys break. So they're really good to react to the scarier units on the field. They are very useful against vampire counts for that reason. Armies that have a lot of units that cause terror, or just like demonettes, for instance, who chant and demoralize your units. I mean, you throw some flagellants out there to pin them, and then you can just work around them. They won't necessarily win the fight, but they'll give you time to maneuver to win the fight. Brettonian men-at-arms. We'll go over them with the Brettonian roster. Heavy Free Company. Just more Free Company, but with heavy weapons. They still have the same leather armor. They're definitely better than the normal Free Company, but still hardly worth bringing. If you absolutely need troops, chances are you'll be able to build these guys. That's really the only reason why you would have Free Company, is if you have to react quickly on the campaign map to an enemy invading your territory, and you have nothing else ready to muster. Anaconda's Amazons, again, don't know where you get these guys. They screech. They're good in the wood. They're good at forest fighting. Good morale. Decent enough stat line. Actually, a really decent stat line. Hard to kill, too. That's interesting. Good charge as well. At least for a light infantry unit. Marienburg Guard. Nothing spectacular. They're a pretty basic spearman unit. Special to Marienburg, as well as their marines. I mean, if you gotta build something, you're gonna end up building these guys. They're just another unit pool to recruit from, so that's always good. I mean, you can have twice the spearmen, essentially, with having these guys recruitable. Carlson Guard, a foot militia. They can make shield wall, excellent morale, can't hide. Again, I don't know much about these guys. Pretty decent stat line, a good defense, not a very good charge, but they are militia. So, probably garrison duty is what I would see for these guys, just based on the stat line. The Sparrows Vendettas. I believe they have pistols, and they dual wield. Decent enough attack, terrible charge, decent enough defense, and they have a ranged option. So, they're pretty versatile, I suppose. Don't really want to send them charging in, but, I mean, they could take a charge and fight it out, it seems. Witch Hunters. Inspire nearby troops. There's only 25 of them in a group, but they do have 3 hit points, which is pretty potent. Not really built for charging, but in a straight melee, they can hold their own. And they also have very good quality pistols, so they're very good at skirmishing and then maneuvering around somewhere where they're, like, countercharging, not something you want to do with Witch Hunters, but just reinforcing a line, maybe. Moving them on the flank and attacking them there, maybe. That's a good idea. But you definitely want to use those pistols as much as you can. Nahikarum Mortals. Again, another Arab unit that, if you take the settlement, you're able to get them. Their charge is atrocious. Just that stat line is pretty bad, now that I really look at it. Good morale, good stamina, but just not a very good stat line. Border Prince's Axemen. Again, you capture Border Prince's territory, you're able to build these guys. Decent enough attack, good morale. Yeah, nothing too spectacular. I've never played with them on the campaign map, so I don't know if they have a decent upkeep or recruitment costs, whatnot, but yeah. I mean, if they're just another option. That's one of the things that I like, having variety in these rosters, is that all of them are present in the build table. So just having the option to build them means you can build more things without having to wait for the recruitment pool to replenish, which is always very useful. For like the Marienburg Guard, for instance, just having that many more spearmen that much quicker. It's nothing but a good thing. Shield Maidens, recruitable in Norska. They are a very good defensive unit, very high defense, not meant for charges. Not a very good attack, but, you know, a decent attack, I guess. Well, I can't even call it a decent attack. That's a pretty bad attack, to be honest. But, I mean, they're defensive, so they're very good at holding down settlements. You can get them to hold a wall pretty decently while you fire up into the army as they come across. That's decent strategy, I found. Pretty decent at holding a city street. But yeah, only recruitable in the north. Combat bonus in snow, which is always good. And they inspire nearby troops. I didn't know that. Border Prince's Spearmen. Pretty standard Spearman unit. Recruitable from Border Prince's areas. Just between the Badlands and the Empire. Cathay Mercenary Spearmen. Yeah, fairly decent. Nothing to be proud of, really. Decent morale, decent defense, terrible charge, an alright attack, I guess. I think you get these guys from taking control of the Silk Road to Cathay, and you're able to build these guys once you have the settlement captured. They're in the Darklands, I believe. Battle Pilgrims, a Brettonian unit. I'll go over those with the Brettonian roster. Estalian Hombres. Good defense, good attack, alright charge. You can get these guys by taking settlements in Estalia, and then they'll be recruitable from there. Men-at-Arms, Brettonian unit, go over them later. Albion Warriors. Woad-wearing Warriors of Albion. They can make a shield wall. They have a good defense despite not having heavy armor. They have a good attack, just because they're like Celtic barbarians, basically. I'm surprised their charge isn't higher, but yeah, they have pretty decent stat line for that. You're able to recruit them from Albion once you take one of the settlements there. Grudgebringer Infantry. These guys are mercenaries. Really good medium infantry, built to hold the line. They can win a melee with that stat line, not necessarily on the charge, but you give them time and they can totally do it. They function best in shield wall. They have good morale, and yeah, if you can afford them, they're a good choice. Talayan Legion. You go to Talea and you can take a settlement, and you'll be able to recruit these guys. They can make a shield wall. They have a really good defense, not meant for charging. Pretty much they're there to pin the enemy. For that purpose, they're pretty decent. Huskarls, javelin throwing axemen. Their javelins can hit pretty hard. They're really not built for charging, but they are heavy infantry nonetheless. They have a good defensive stat and a good attack stat. So, like, maneuvering them onto a flank and then throwing your javelins and then charging in and getting them stuck in, it's always a good strategy. Brettonian Halberdiers, we'll go over them later. The Cursed Company of Richter Kruger. They frighten nearby enemies, which is a very good thing. They have a decent defense. They have an alright attack and charge. I'm assuming that they don't rout because they're undead. I could be wrong about that. I've never actually seen them in action. But yeah, again, another mercenary unit. You take a certain city in Talea or Estelia, I forget which one of those, and you're able to recruit these guys. That's where most of these units from the bottom roster, if not all of them, come from. Talayan pikemen, just a solid professional pikeman unit from Talea, if you could not tell. Not built for charging, just built for holding the line. Same with the Estelian Teresio. Just another good, solid pikeman unit. The Knights of Arago. They function like dismounted feudal knights from the vanilla game. Really high defense, decent attack. Nothing crazy about their charge, but they're just built for melee. They can shield wall, and they're meant to take a charge and fight them off. Perazzo's Lost Legion pikemen. One of the better pikeman units. The remaining part of a failed Estalian expedition to Lustria. Can't hide good stamina, very long spears. Ogres. They can recruit ogres. Ogres are fantastic shock infantry. 7 hit points, very high attack, high defense, high charge. They can war cry. Yeah, they'll just bowl over most infantry lines. The Alcatani Fellowship. Very good pikeman unit. Very good armor, good defense, good attack. Very long spears, so they'll be fighting 3 ranks, 4 ranks of spears at a time. Sons of Stromfels, those shark dudes again. Another mercenary ogre unit, essentially. Leopold's Leopard Company. Another solid pikeman unit. A lot of mercenaries of these pikeman units. Good morale, long spears. Very good choice if you can afford them. Another ogre infantry. Rico's Republican Guard. They have just very good armor. Very, very good armor. Probably the best pikeman unit in the game, I believe. Very high defense, good attack, long spears, a lot of reach. If you can afford these guys, you should definitely get them. Again, all of these mercenary units, you have to find the settlement they're based at and conquer it, and then you're able to recruit them just like you would any other unit. Nuln pikemen, recruitable from Nuln. A very decent pikeman unit. Not as good as the Rico's Republican Guard, but still, they fill the role very well. Nuln and Wissenland like to fight in a very pike and shot way, and these guys fulfill the pike role in that. Go figure. Golfing's Mercenary Ogres. Just another mercenary ogre unit. Just a better mercenary ogre unit, to be honest. I believe they're about twice as good in terms of stats. They have the same amount of HP though. So, just if you have to pick, these guys are your ogres of choice. Another Brettonian unit, Free Company Archers. A very good unit if you're hurting for mercenaries, or not mercenaries, but if you're hurting for skirmisher units. The majority of your settlements will be able to build these guys, and you'll be able to build a lot of them. So, always a good idea to at least have these guys if you can't create regular state troops. Marienburg Archers, very comparable to Empire Archers, the state troop, but they're just another pool of units, much like their spearmen, the Marienburg Guard. So you can field a very large army very quickly with having these extra choices, as long as you can afford it. Lumpengroups Fighting Cocks. These are halflings, I believe they are called. They are not called hobbits. I'm pretty sure they're just called halflings in Warhammer. But they are a mercenary unit that has really good range, good bows. They have combat bonus in woods. They are vulnerable to return fire, just because their defense and their stat line is terrible. But they can hide in long grass, so use that to your advantage. Grudgebringer crossbows. Much like their Grudgebringer infantry, they are a solid unit for what is on the tin. They are a good crossbow unit. Not much else can be said about them. They bring decent armor penetration to a Grudgebringer mercenary company. Talayan marksmen are the same way. You go to Talaya, you're able to recruit these guys, and they have good armor penetration, and, I mean, they're crossbows. What do you expect? Bandoleros Gringos, an Astalian mercenary unit armed with handguns. Good range, very good against armor, a decent enough defense. Like, you don't want them in melee, necessarily, but if you lose micro, or you just get overwhelmed, they can at least take a few hits. Take more hits than a lot of different skirmishers. Border Prince's crossbowmen. Again, you take a settlement on Border Prince's territory, you're able to recruit these guys. Just increases your unit pool, adds to the diversity of your army. Peraza's Lost Legion crossbowmen. A good support unit for your Lost Legion pikemen. Pretty much any pikemen, but they're just a solid crossbow unit. They have more armor than most, so they're able to stand their ground better than most. Marksmen of Miragliano. You take the city of Miragliano. Not only will you be able to get these guys, but Miragliano is actually the place where steam tanks are developed. So if you're able to get that place, you're able to build steam tank factories elsewhere. So you're able to just make them. Yeah, other than that, has a breastplate, decent armor, crossbow unit, so it's decent against other enemy armor. Kislevetsky Sledopitki. I think that's how you say that. I have no idea who these guys are. Deadly warriors from the steppes of Kislev. I think they might be mounted skirmishers, maybe? Judging by their unit card. I don't know. Braganza's besiegers function like Pavis crossbows. You use these guys to out-skirmish your enemy. They'll be taking a lot of return fire. In a perfect world, they will be taking the majority of the return fire. You put them in a skirmish mode, and you just duke it out with the enemy skirmishers. And they should win. They have high defense, and they have that big old shield on their back, so when they reload, they're even more well-armored. Then there are the Bright Wizards. Bright Wizards are a very, very good unit. 2 hit points, 20 defense. They have long-range projectiles. They fire much like trebuchets. And they also have an alternate fire mode where they fire like mangonels. So they're able to spread damage over a very wide area. It's a little less dependable because you don't really know when the projectile will deploy and spread, but the fireball is pretty effective. I've not actually seen the Jade, is that Jade or Emerald Wizards? The green nature wizards, and these guys being the, I don't know what kind of wizards these are, but they have 2 other wizard units, and I have not actually seen them in action yet. But if they're anything like the Bright Wizards, they will be devastating. I might just go into a custom battle here in a minute just to show them off. Araby Desert Riders, again, just a unit from Araby that you can recruit, light cavalry. decent at what it does. Norse Raiders, if you head up north, you'll be able to recruit these guys. Crossing Cavalry, Cavalry Militia Unit, decent enough defense. Stats kind of leave a little bit to be desired, but meh. Porter Princess Cavalry, defense of 12, fairly decent as far as light cavalry goes. Grudgebringer Cavalry. These pretty much finish the trifecta of the Grudgebringer mercenaries, where you have crossbows, infantry, and these guys. Almost 20 defense, very good defense. Almost nothing for a charge, but they're more a melee-centric cavalry. So while your Grudgebringer infantry have the shield wall, and they're holding them on their shield wall, you just maneuver these guys around, and then you just kind of hack them down. Ragnar's Wolves. Ragnar's Wolves have a really good charge, really good attack. All around, they're pretty fast considering how light they are. Decent defense. They're pretty damn good at what they do. Knights Errant, Estalian Caballeros, Estalian mercenaries with a very well armored unit. 25 defense, 10 charge. They can get in and they can stay in, which is always a good thing. Knights of the Realm Bodyguard, Hunters of Sigmar. Imperial Knights with very good morale. They're very well armored with 22 defense. Very good charge. Knights of the Realm, Volan's Venators. Mercenary with some of the best armor in the game. 25 defense. Good charge, good attack. Very hard to take down. Really your best bet is to get them to run, which even then isn't a very easy thing to do. Questing Knights, Grail Knights. You can always recruit Giants if you need to. Hit 14 hit points, defense 40, charge 25, attack 25. They are quite tough to bring down. Always a boon to any army that can afford to bring them. Ogre Lead Belchers, again, always a boon if you can afford them. Ogres with cannons, what's not to like? Very long range, very good attack speed. At least in this version, they've since been changed to where their attack speed is lower, their range is lower, just because they are a little OP. Araby Elephants conquer an Araby settlement, and you're able to conquer or recruit these guys. Always good to have elephants if you can bring them. Will slow down your army, though. Raiders. I think they are mounted crossbow unit, maybe? I'm assuming they are because they're effective against armor. Maybe even a mounted pistol unit. But, yeah, Raiders are... I'd imagine they are mounted bandits, in a way. Not a very good stat line, but they have a pretty decent missile attack, and the fact that they're good against armor means they're useful for that purpose, at least. Outriders. Outriders are basically your upgraded pistoliers. Very good against armor, excellent morale. Anything that you would use pistoliers to do, you can use these guys for, and they would do better. Bronzino's Galloper Guns. Light cannon, long range attack. Yeah, nothing much really to say. They're cannons, so if you can bring them, you may as well. Grudgebringer cannons. A lot like a bombard, not as good as your Empire Great Cannons, but I mean, it's just another pool. You can build some Great Cannons or Empire Cannons, next to these guys, then you have that many more cannons, which is always a good thing. A lot of these counties we can just skip, but we'll go through and see what the unique units are for them. Nolngard for Wissenland, a very sturdy halberdier unit. No shield, so they're vulnerable to missile fire, but they have very good armor, and you can recruit them from basically everywhere in Wissenland. So you can always have a plentiful amount of halberdiers between your regular state troops and these guys. I love them as a unit. They're very good. Grendel's Defenders. Very good spearman unit. I believe they're on par. No, they're actually slightly better than your standard state troop. But as with most of these named units, they just are an addition to their unit pool. So you have that many more spearmen to recruit. So if you want a front line of spearmen, you can very quickly put that together in just a few turns between these guys and your state troops. They also have access to dismounted right guards, Sons Manan, High Elf spears, both sets of, both units of warrior priests, Empire crossbowmen, handguns, archers, High Elf archers. Stern Tower marksmen are a unique crossbow unit. I don't know how much better they are. 653. Interesting. They have a slightly better charge and a better missile attack, so they're just better at penetrating armor. So basically they just have a better crossbow. Quarrelers, Thunderers, Engineers with long rifles, Shadow Warriors, Engineers repeater handguns, Knights of Carmine, Gold Lion Knights, Gardemoor, Knights Panther, Knights of the Blazing Sun, Inner Circle Knights, Reiksguard Knights, and then just the plethora of unique units. Demogryphs, Conquer Steam Tank, Pistoliers. They do have Nuln Great Cannons. Slightly more damage against buildings, just a better cannon, essentially. Yeah, I believe that's pretty much it as far as the unit. I mean, otherwise it's just the standard Empire roster. As well as all the other mercenaries and Brettonian units that they can conquer and recruit. Moving on to the Grand County of Averland. Their special unit is Averland Heavy Halberdiers. They wear full plate armor, very heavily armored. They are a very good frontline unit, one of my favorites. Between their heavy armor and their halberds, they are able to dish out a lot of pain and take a lot of abuse. It takes a lot to break a halberd line of these guys that are about 4 or 6 units deep. Greatsword, dismounted, Reiksguard, warrior priests, dwarf units, elf units, master engineers, all of the knightly orders. Steam tanks, your standard artillery park of volley gun, rockets, great cannon, and mortars. All of the mercenary units at your disposal. Yeah, it's pretty much just the halberdiers that make them unique. Yeah, that's about it. But trust me, that goes a long way. The Grand County of Stirland. Hellhuntins Redeemers. They are a light halberd unit, good against cavalry, able to quickly deploy and form themselves up into a spear wall. The Scarlet Guard, professional halberds, slightly better stat line than your standard state troops. The Stir River Patrol. These guys will be your front line against the majority of orc incursions that happen, and they will happen often. Dwarf units, Reiksguard, Greatswords, Sons of Manon. Elf units, Warrior Priests, State Troop Skirmishers. The Deathjacks, which are a unique archer unit. Basically native hunters, I believe. Yeah, Stirland likes to field their archers. Stir River Patrol as well, another named archer unit. Very rugged country fighter types. Dwarven Skirmishers, Elven Skirmishers, Master Engineers, and then you have the Knights of the Raven. Knights of the Raven are a very unique knightly order. They have a good defense, not a terrific charge, but they have, they're heavy cav, so they do a good job at charging. An attack that's basically on par with most of the other knightly orders, but the thing that makes them unique is they are knights armed with bows. So they are a heavy cav unit that function as very mobile skirmishers, and they will cause havoc to the majority of the enemies that you face. They also come in a bodyguard variant that are armed with pistols that are just that much more effective, and they're better against armor. Demogryphs, Pistoliers, Standard Imperial Artillery Park, all the various mercenaries that you could possibly want. Yeah. A few more unique units in the Archer roster and the Halberds. Got these guys, Scarlet Guard, and the Hellhunters Redeemers. But yeah, moving on. The Grand Duchies of Middenheim and Middenland. The Swords of Ulrich, just a better swordsman unit. Slightly less defense, slightly better attack, better charge. Halberds, dwarf units, great swords. The Tüdingen Guard are a hammer-wielding infantry unit that are really good. 126 units. Very good against armor. Good defense. Very good charge for being infantry. Better charge than some cavalry, even. They have Reiksguard, Great Swords, Sons of Manon, Elven units, both Warrior Priests, crossbows, Archers, handguns, Elven units, yeah. Master Engineers with repeaters and snipers, or long rifles, I suppose. Most of the knightly orders, except for the Knights of the Raven. Standard Artillery Park. Again, just a plethora of mercenaries to choose from. So, these guys are a little more offensive, it seems, between their Swords of Ulrich and their Tüdingen Guard. They'll be fielding those more than most other state troops. But, well, I don't know about more than state troops. They'll still be fielding a shitload of state troops, but these accentuate that very well. Next up we have the Grand Duchy of Talabecland. Talabecland Swordmasters, which are a decently... basically just swordsmen, ever so slightly better stats. Horned hunters, can hide in long grass, better in the woods, expert infiltrators. Good attack, they're lightly armored, vulnerable to missiles. Nordland Marines, pistol infantry with swords. Not the greatest charge, but they can attack pretty decently. Empire Spearmen, Halberds, Dwarf Infantry, Great Swords, Dismounted, Reiksguard, Sons of Manon, High Elves, both Warrior Priests, all the Skirmishers, Archers, Handguns, Crossbow, same High Elf units, Master Engineers with Long Rifle and Repeaters, the majority of the Knightly Orders, Standard Artillery Park, again, and of course all the mercenaries. Really just seems that their Horned Hunter and their Sword Masters are really the only things that change up how they play. And even then, they don't change it up very much. But it's nice to have some infiltrators, though. Don't see that very often in the Imperial Army. And the Swordmasters are definitely worth getting. I mean, they're not that much better than your Imperial Swordsmen, but just the simple fact that you have that many more swordsmen to field means that you have a very aggressive army if you actually take the time to recruit it. The Grand Principality of Ostland. Standard state troops. You have the Ostland Black Guard, which is an elite unit of great swords. Just one more unit of charge, or one more point of charge and defense than your normal great swords. Elven units, Reiksguard, Dismounted, Sons of Manon, Ostland Spearmen, which are your unique unit. You can field that many more spearmen because of these guys. They have a lot better defense. They're a lot more armored. They come default very heavily armed, so you can always count on them as a good frontline unit. Not as good as an attack as most halberd units. Just the bonuses they get. But yeah, definitely a solid frontline unit. Both warrior priests, empire crossbows, handgunners. The Firelocks of Reikland, a unique named handgun unit. Slightly better than your standard handguns. I actually got a 10 charge. Solid shooters. These guys are your Ostland Hunters. I believe these guys have shotguns, like double-barrel shotguns, so you want them to like hide in the grass and then wait for the enemy to get close and then expose yourself and fire and retreat. But yeah, they have very good missile attack. 16 compared to the standard handgunners 10. Dwarven Skirmishers, Quarrelers, Thunderers, Master Engineers, Shadow Warriors, the Knightly Orders, minus, again, the Knights of the Raven, Pistoliers, Mortars, Cannons, Rockets, Volley Gun, and of course, the plethora of mercenaries. The League of Ostermark. The Death's Head. These guys are really good halberd units. Shielded. Much better defense than your standard halberd. Slightly better attack. They actually have slightly better charge. These are a very good defensive unit. They'll definitely be a good line holder. Definitely good to mix in with your standard halberds. That way they don't run, because they're just doing that much better. Spearmen, dwarf units, greatswords, Reiksguard, Sons of Manon, warrior priests, all your standard skirmish units, Quarrelers, High Elf Archers, Thunderers, Master Engineers, all your Knightly Orders, Pistoliers, Standard Artillery Park, and Mercenaries. Lots and lots of mercenaries. The Grand Barony of Hochland. Standard State Troops, Great Swords, Reiksguard, Sons of Manon, High Elves, Warrior Priests, Skirmishers, Handguns, High Elf Archers, and Hochland Marksmen. They have a absolutely atrocious stat line, but that's not why you bring them. They have a very good range, very accurate, and they're very good against armor. If you can find the right ground for these guys, they will pay off huge dividends in the future. But you have to kind of babysit them. If you can do that, though, they definitely pay off. I mean, if you're playing as Hochland, you want these guys over standard handguns every single time. Long rifles, dwarf skirmishers, shadow warriors. Knightly orders, artillery, and a bajillion mercenaries. The Grand Barony of Nordland. Nordland Marines, a very quick infantry unit, pretty decent attack, better than swordsmen even. Not as good defense though. They are equipped with pistols, so skirmish before you send them in. Halberds, dwarf units, great swords, Sons of Manon, dismounted Reiksguard, High Elves, warrior priests, standard skirmish line, Nordland heavy crossbows. They're equipped with heavy armor and shields, so they can take at least a little bit of punishment. And of course they have crossbows, so they're good against armor. Quarrelers, Thunderers, Hochland long rifles, Shadow Warriors, Repeaters, Sons of Manon bodyguard, which are unique to Nordland. I believe everybody has dismounted Sons of Manon. That's probably only if they take that settlement, though. I don't think anybody else except for these guys can build that unit. And then your free companies and your spellcasters and all of your other mercenaries. And now we move to Brettonia. They can field a couple of Empire units, which I'm surprised by. Swordsmen, spearmen, both warrior priests, crossbows, bows, war altar of Sigmar, and the artillery units. I don't know in what capacity. I think they actually have to retake a stolen or a conquered imperial settlement in order for them to get any of these things, because I know in the lore they don't use cannons or anything, at least on their home turf. So maybe if they go to war and they capture these buildings, or if they, like for instance, if a WoG comes through and they retake some of the territory from Nuln or something, or Wissenland, then maybe that's how they get this roster, but I don't know. For actual Brettonian units, there's the men-at-arms swordsmen. Now, all of these guys are, all of their infantry are peasants, basically. Not the greatest morale, so if they come up against vampire counts, you're going to be running a lot, unless you have units there specifically to keep them in check, like your warrior priests or your war altar. Even witch hunters, which inspire the morale. Halberds, always good to have halberds. Battle pilgrims with Grail reliquae. They're kind of like flagellants. Well, actually, they're very much like flagellants, except just for the Lady of the Lake. She is their god, and much like the Empire dying for Sigmar, these guys decide to die for her. Bonus fighting cavalry, excellent morale. Men-at-arms spearmen, good solid frontline unit. Peasant bowmen, just peasants with bows, nothing spectacular. The majority of the Brettonian infantry are just there to build a temporary front line. It is by no means there to win the fight. Their power in winning the fight comes in the form of their cavalry, which they have a lot of variation. From Knights Errant to Grail Knights. Knights Errant are your most plentiful. They're the lowest rank in the Knight hierarchy, and because of that, their stat line reflects that. They are the low tier of the heavy cavalry, but they are still a wonderful heavy cavalry. They have a decent charge, a really good defense, and a decent attack. Knights of the Realm, Bodyguard variant are next. They have a slightly better defense than their unit counterpart. They inspire nearby troops, they have a very good morale, and just a solid stat line. Questing Knights, again, very good defense, much better attack, slightly less charge, one less charge, but still, they have they're heavy calves, so they're able to do some damage. But you stick these guys in, and they just kind of flail around with their double-handed swords, two-handed swords. Grail Knights, they are the absolute best. They have 2 hit points, almost 30 defense, and a charge of 9, attack of 11. These guys are able to not necessarily outfight Blood Dragons, but they are able to stand up to them. Not many units can say that. And Trebuchets, which come in units of 4 Trebuchets. Good rate of fire, good range. Do a lot more damage to infantry than you would expect, to be honest. They're a lot more useful than they are in vanilla medieval. Moving on to Kislev. Kislev, God, I'm going to try and pronounce these names. Droyashikai? Droyashiki. One of those is how you say that. 2 hit points, 15 attack, 13 defense. A shock troop. They're able to just be whirling blades of death. They're really good at deploying on the flanks or breaking lines of, say, spearmen, for instance. Kislev spearmen, your standard spearman unit. They can form a spear wall. They function essentially like pikemen. I believe they actually are pikemen. They don't have a very long pike, but you'll want to basically mitigate these guys to garrison duty. You're able to build them everywhere, and it's always good to have some of these for defensive battles. Dwarf units, High Elf units, Thunders, Quarrelers, Streltsy, which are a very good firearm unit. Most of these units in the Kislev roster aren't necessarily modern by Imperial standards, but their riflemen are very, very good. One of my favorite Kislev units. Ice Mages, which are, they function a lot like mortars, so they have a very good range, and they fire with a very high arc. So, they're very good in defensive situations. You're able to fire over your units, fire over walls, fire over terrain, like cliffs and whatnot. Their spread, though, is pretty wide, so they're not necessarily the most accurate things on the field. But for the amount of fire that they put out, you don't really need them to be. They also have a fairly small ammo pool, so you only want to hit what is important, essentially. Kvasniks function like Nafton warriors. They would throw pitchers of explosive stuff. Good skirmisher unit to have behind your main static line of either spearmen or halberds. Able to do a good amount of damage. Also good to maneuver around the flanks. Then you have Kislev Halberdiers. Kislev Halberdiers, as well as Spearmen, have several levels of armor that you can apply to them. So while they start out pretty lightly armored, they can become pretty heavily armored by the end of the build chain. And naturally, they have halberds, so they're better suited for certain engagements. Just all around, they have a higher attack value than spearmen. So, again, defensive roles are what these guys and the spearmen are best suited at. Then you have your Kreml Guard. Kreml Guard are high charge, high defense, pretty good attack. They inspire troops, they have really good morale, just a powerful charge, and they come standard with heavy armor. So they are a very good heavy infantry choice. They have two-handed axes. They don't have a shield, so while archers will struggle to chew through them, crossbows and handguns will definitely do a number on these guys because of their lack of shield. Then you have your Cassars. Cassars are pretty quick. They're able to pull out a double-handed axe in melee, so they're not completely helpless, but they're still, stat-wise, definitely something you want to keep with, you definitely want to keep them in the skirmish line and treat them as skirmishers. You don't want to just use them as melee units unless you absolutely have to. So they can hold their own, but, you know, there are other units for that role. Elven units, Shadow Warriors, and High Elf Archers. Your Winged Lancers. They're heavy cavalry, pretty quick, decent enough charge, decent attack, pretty well armored. Yeah, just an all-around good cavalry choice. You could field a lot of these over the course of your campaign, and it is very good to have an army where you at least have some of these in every single army. Kislev does very well with a sort of Mongol mentality, where they have just a army full of cavalry units. But for every army, I mean, they also have a good roster for a shooting army because of the Streltsy, the mortars, the ice mages, and the Kvasniks. So they're pretty robust roster, like they have a lot of variety in them. But no matter what you decide, you definitely want to at least bring some Winged Lancers, just to have a good cavalry option. The Chekist Bodyguard, which are mounted gunners, mounted riflemen, not pistoliers, but mounted rifles. They have 2 hit points, a decent attack, and, you know, an alright defense and charge. But mainly they're just a mounted skirmish unit. So they have very good armor penetration because of the nature of them being mounted rifles. They inspire troops, so they can hold down morale pretty well. And yeah, they're very good at harassing enemy flanks and picking out specific units that need to be shot. So high armor units, basically. Griffin Legion, good defense, decent charge, decent attack. Basically just Winged Lancers, except better. Best heavy cavalry Kislev has to offer in mass. The Tsar Guard, which are your better bodyguard unit. Inspire nearby infantry, 2 hit points, 17 defense, good attack. So these guys are better suited for getting stuck in and just surviving in melee. Pretty well armored. Good charge. Sons of Ursine, same thing, except slightly less effective stats. Still 2 hit points, good armor. Bonus fighting cavalry. Then you have the Unggols, which are swift, armed horse archers. Long range. They're vulnerable to return fire, but they're quick, so if you keep them at their maximum range and keep them shooting, then you'll get your money's worth. Mounted militia are mounted gunners. They're really good against armor. They inspire nearby troops. Decent defense. Not really built for attack or charge, but they're just a really solid skirmish unit. And then you have Chekists. I love Chekists so much. A decent stat line, but where they shine is their missiles and their hit points of 2 hit points and 11 missile damage. They're really good against armor. You want them there for that reason. Always bring them if you can. And then there are wagons. Wagons are a field fortification with a built-in, almost like an organ gun that's pretty short range. I've never actually effectively used them, except to just block city streets, which they do a just very good job of that. But yeah, they are just straight up wagons with spikes out front. I don't think they actually affect cavalry running into them, but they can deploy sharpened stakes. Yeah, they're a very unique field fortification that only they have access to. The Empire can't field anything like this, and to be honest, they need it, considering that they're that far north, and it helps a whole lot against chaos. Irrigon mortars. They are, well, you're pretty much standard mortar. They have this nifty looking blast shield on the front, which is kind of cool. Long range area of attack. Always good to have mortars. I believe that's actually their only artillery option, aside from what you could find in the mercenary pool. But yeah, that's actually the last Kislevite unit. And then they have the same mercenaries that the Empire has access to. No giants, it looks like. It's actually the mercenary roster is slightly smaller. It looks like they have all the Talayan and Estalian units. And then finally we have the Dogs of War. The Dogs of War have access to High Elves, Dwarves, Araby if they get that far, and a couple units of Free Company, Trebuchets, and all of the mercenaries that you could possibly want. But you have to get them. That's the main thing. I believe they only start with Marienburg and the Border Princes areas. So you can only recruit from those areas. So like Marienburg Guards, Border Prince Axemen, that kind of thing. And then as you move into Talea and Estalia, you're able to recruit more. So yeah, that is the full comprehensive guide to the roster. Do keep in mind that this version is a early version of the mod, beginning of the end times. We should be getting a new version in a week or two to show off. People have been asking me constantly, when is this mod going to come out? It will come out when it is finished, which, I mean, there's talk about it coming out before Warhammer Total War, but I mean, if it doesn't, it doesn't. I mean, there's really nothing more to be said. It'll come out as soon as it's ready to come out. There's still a bit of work that needs to be done with build chains and balancing the campaign and all that kind of stuff. But in its current version, it's very playable, very fun. I can't wait for you all to get a hold of it and play it yourselves. But yeah, that was the full roster. Like and subscribe, and let me know down in the comments for any custom battles you want to see, or just anything with this mod that you want to see, really. Until then, I'm gonna go record more campaign gameplay. I'll catch y'all later. See you in the next one.